All right, welcome back to the IMNerd podcast. I'm your host Freyway, and I'm here with my amazing Black Mirrored co-host Kenny. Not even sure if
Are
he's
you?
real. That's the thing. I'm not even sure if you're real, but we are talking about Black Mirror today and the new season specifically. So maybe we'll go back retroactively and cover the first several seasons of Black Mirror because there has been many. There have been specials and all kinds of cool shit. But
I'm gonna do that, especially considering the seasons of Black Mirror are like 3 episodes. So
some of them are. And what's also cool is that there is Black Mirror is an anthology, so every episode is basically a standalone anyway, right? Like theoretically you could do an entire episode if you wanted to on just the Christmas special with Don Draper from Mad Men, you know, like that could be its own episode theoretically. So yeah, the newest season, no, I think they're on season 6. I want to say that this is season 6, and it's the newest one. It has 6 episodes total. I watched the first 3 a little over a week ago, and the reason why I only watched 3 is because of 2 reasons. One, I do like breaking up content into sections when it's long form like this. So if we're doing, again, House of the Dragon, whenever that comes back, since the fucking writer strike is pushing it back to like 2025 now. But when we do long form content, I like to break it up because I feel like it's not easy or fair to talk about 10 episodes that are an hour long each in a 2-hour podcast. Like certainly you can, but there's so much to cover. And yeah, so I like breaking these up in the sections or parts or whatever you want to call it. So I watched the first 3 episodes of Black Mirror, and one of the reasons was because of that everything I just said, but the other reason was because I was just fucking blown away by the first 3 episodes. Like they were all pretty decent episodes. I typically get like 1 or 2 episodes of a Black Mirror season that I like, and then the other ones are kind of a rant to me. But the first 3 of this new season to me were really good. Go ahead. What did you want to say?
No, I just said, I agree. I haven't seen all the seasons of Black Mirror. I couldn't even tell you which ones I have seen. I know that I've seen some seasons of it.
Yeah.
And I've kind of got the same feeling where there's like 1 or 2 episodes that I like, and then there's always like 1 or 2 episodes that I think is just fucking really dumb.
Yeah. You've seen Striking Vipers yet? The one where they go into the video game?
No, I haven't. I don't know. Maybe I don't think I've seen it though.
All right. Well, I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to say anything about it. But let's just say that one went viral a couple of years ago, and it was like trending and stuff. And if you don't remember Striking Vipers, then you definitely did not see it, because those 2 words together just means a certain thing. First of all, it sounds wild, but those 2 words together mean a certain thing. And I think the concept of that episode is actually really interesting, but it was widely controversial on the internet. So
yeah, I don't think I've seen it then, but yeah, no, I've seen a bunch of the episodes. You know, some of them stick out to me. Like there's the one with I think, I don't remember the actor's name, but he's like in a prison where like you have to you're like on an exercise bike and you have to like watch content and like get credits or whatever.
Yeah, I saw that one.
I remember seeing that one. I seen the one where like everybody's eyes have cameras and like you can rewatch your whole life. And then I think the very first episode was like the UK Prime Minister fucks a pig.
Yeah, that was the first episode I ever watched, and that did not make me think that the show was going to be good. I watched that with people as well. I think either Medina or a group of people, but I remember watching the very first episode of Black Mirror years and years and years ago now. And
I think it's been 10 years, which is insane.
That is a bit insane, because I don't think Black Mirror was part of my decade ago, right? Like a decade ago, I don't feel like Black Mirror was a part of it, but maybe it was.
Well, what's insane, I think it was. Like I was looking at this earlier. I think it came out like about 10 years ago, which is just so fucking crazy.
Yeah, that is weird to think, because again, when I watched that first episode, I was watching it and I was kind of staring at the screen for a while, and then it got to the absurdity of him fucking the pig in episode 1 of season 1, and I just said, okay, that was interesting. Like that was definitely one of those endings that had you kind of like, what the hell did I just watch? But then the episodes after that started to become more interesting, and I think the show in general has gotten more interesting over time as the ideas have gotten better and the concepts have gotten closer to reality. Because I think that is what makes Black Mirror good to me, is the closer it seems to realism, the better, in my opinion. Like the closer, not specifically to what we're doing right now in our times, but more importantly, can it become a reality? That is what I'm talking about. So those episodes for me tend to be so amazing. One of the ones that was great for me, and I always remember this episode, it was one where everyone has interactions with people. Let's say you just like meet your delivery driver at the door, and
I saw this one too. You like rate people,
you
right?
rate people, exactly, Kenny. So
yeah, I saw that one too.
That episode to me is one of the best ever, because I think that we are very close to that as a society for real. I think that
Yeah.
we are very close to Yelp and Google reviews not being just for businesses, but being for actual human beings on a very daily basic interaction type of
In an
level.
interesting way, we do kind of do that. If you think of apps like Uber,
Yeah.
and like,
We do rate people. In fact, I didn't know for a long ass time that when you get out of an Uber ride, like the driver can rate you too.
they can. You can be like a low rated rider. I don't 100% know what it does. Maybe it gives
You
you
get
lower
kicked off.
priority, or you just get kicked off.
Eventually, you get kicked off if your rating falls to a certain point. You get kicked off the service. So
yeah. So, but then they also, just as a side rant, but Uber does kind of an annoying thing where they make it very hard to rate somebody less than 5 stars, in my opinion. So I've been in rides where there wasn't really anything wrong with the ride, but I don't know, for one reason or another, I was like, I'll give it 4 stars.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to give it 4 stars, which in my opinion is still awesome, you're great. You're just, I don't know, weren't perfect. And no one is. So I try to give somebody 4 stars, and then it goes, what are the 3 reasons why this was a bad ride? And I was like, whoa, it wasn't a bad ride.
Yeah.
And so now you have to like fill out a questionnaire, and like you can't progress
until you do
Uber until you do it. So then I go, I guess they were 5 stars.
Yeah,
you just give them
save
5
the
stars and
hassle.
move
That is a way to curtail lower than 5 stars. I don't like that. I don't like that you're basically incentivized to just get 5 stars for the sake of getting through the rating process. Because the other thing is that Uber takes over your device when it wants a rating. Like I open up Uber Eats all the time. And if I took an Uber ride, like not even an Uber Eats order that I didn't rate, if I took an Uber ride, it'll pop up like, yo, rate the driver that you had 2 days ago that you forgot to rate before you order your food. And that is annoying. Like that shit is just annoying. Now, granted, I think that you can skip it now. I think you can just literally click skip now. But there was a period I feel like where that shit wasn't a thing, and people probably raged on the App Store and said, this app is terrible now. I do not have time to be rating people. I don't give a fuck. Like, kiss my ass, basically. I told my driver to their face, I enjoyed the ride. Thank you so much. I gave them a tip. That's all that's required of me as far as I'm concerned. I don't feel like rating this person or whatever. But yeah, now I think you can skip it. Anyways, yeah, the rating thing, like you said, it is becoming more of a reality. And I think that Uber and Lyft are definitely bringing us closer to that, because you are rating individual people, and it's a mutual thing. Like I said, I didn't know that they rate you too. So that to me could totally happen in real life, where especially in like Asian countries, I feel like, because I know how big social media is. In like Asia, it's even bigger. You know, like people are really big on how you treat others, whereas here in America, especially in certain cities, being rude, I won't say it's expected, but it's kind of expected sometimes. Like you just know when you go to certain places, right? I know when I don't eat McDonald's, but let's say I did. In my experiences, when you eat McDonald's, like you go through the drive-through, or you go to pick up your food inside the restaurant, you might run into a pretty rude cashier, somebody who just does not give a fuck about being friendly or having good customer service. And that's just how it is. And a lot of times,
McDonald's, Burger King, I even saw it. And this is something that kind of sucks, because I think Chick-fil-A was probably the nicest like environment in terms of fast food. Like usually their customer service or whatever is like the nicest. But I was in a Chick-fil-A recently, like 2 months ago, and it was like the worst Chick-fil-A I've ever seen. Like they just did not give a single fuck. Like I don't know, they just didn't give a fuck. I won't get into the whole story.
I always wonder though, when it comes to Chick-fil-A, because they are known, even online, to be a very friendly place. Like Chick-fil-A is just known for being one of the friendliest fast food chains. And you know why they make such a point about it? It's because of exactly what I'm saying. This kind of proves it to be true. The fact that it's expected that fast food restaurants don't have friendly or nice customer service is the reason why Chick-fil-A stood out so much for so many years online, where people were like, yo, you go to Chick-fil-A, those people literally will wash your car, take your kids to the park,
it's a different experience.
It is, usually. And I always wondered if people had bad experiences with Chick-fil-A, and I'm sure that they have. And it's interesting that you've had one where like you felt like this isn't what I expected from a Chick-fil-A. So it kind of took you aback a bit, I bet, in that moment. Like, oh shit, I'm in Chick-fil-A and this person's being an asshole, or whatever the case may be. Everyone's human. So at the end of the day, you don't know what somebody went through and all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. You get it. But I do think that Chick-fil-A is known for having good customer service, but I wouldn't mind rating people, but here's the issue with rating things in general. And Medina told this to me years ago, and I think it's very true. I'm sure you've heard it from him or just heard of it, period. People really only rate things when you have a bad experience.
Yeah.
Like when's the last time you had such a pleasant experience that you went on Google, pulled up the business, and wrote a review about how great the service was? Like, it's very rare for most people, obviously a lot of reviews are good, but most people, think about how many people actually go to any given restaurant that just never rate it because the service was just like, it was whatever, or it was great, and they still just, whatever. Like,
yeah, no, I think it's true. Like, for example, if now I'm not really a Yelp or anything person.
I don't do
even know
Yelp.
if Yelp's still around.
It is, but Google's destroying it because Google just has built-in reviews now. So yeah, like Yelp used to be tied in.
Google does have that.
Google just has reviews. If you type in a restaurant right now, you type in Han Dynasty, it's just going to have a ton of reviews. But go ahead, sorry to cut you off.
No, it's good. So, like, we went to Chubby Cattle, right?
Yes,
and that was a fun experience.
Only because we were friends. Because the service was awful.
Yeah. The service wasn't great. Like, there was things that went wrong, but
yes,
in general, it was fun being there. I never did a hot pot before. The food was good.
Yes,
regardless of how long it took to come out.
Yep.
The food was good when you cooked it, and the broth was great, etc. Even though that also took 20 minutes, but whatever. So I don't think, based on my experience with other people, I think most times when you go out to a restaurant and you have a good time, it's something you talk about with your friends and family. Oh my God, you got to go to Chubby Cat, or oh my God, you got to go to Steak 48 or whatever. I've never been there. I've heard you talk about it.
Yeah,
but
I'm going next week.
Oh my God, you got
his birthday.
You got to do this thing or eat here. Oh, they're so great. But when something's bad and like you're scathing and you're angry, like there's a few things that get humans motivated, like anger. And so like when you're angry, that's when you pull out your phone and go, I'm gonna make sure everybody fucking knows that this place fucking sucks.
Yep. You're right. And then very true.
You do that.
So again, going back to what you just said, and the point was like, people typically only rate things in general when the experience is not pleasant, and myself included. I felt myself, I went to Primo's months ago. I might even talked about this on the podcast, or maybe I talked to a couple people about it, but I had such an unpleasant experience walking into Primo's and trying to place an order. So there was this fat black woman behind the counter. I'm going to give you her demographic because that's what I feel like doing. So she was a fat black woman, and she was on her phone when I walked in. So I walk in and I was like, hey, I wanted to order a hoagie. And she said, are you picking up? And I was like, no, I want to order a hoagie. And she was like, oh, well, you said you were picking up. And I was like,
all right.
So Kenny,
all right.
So I said, no, I didn't. I said I wanted to place an order for a hoagie, and she's like, "No, you said."
What difference does it make? Like, what difference if I did? You know what I mean? Look, I'm here now. I'm trying to order the fucking hoagie.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So let me just say, she was a bitch, flat out. Okay, she was being a bitch from the gate, and even thinking about this experience annoys me right now. Like, I'm annoyed. The energy that I'm getting from retelling it is annoying me. So we're having this little back and forth about what I said when I walked in. First of all, why would I ever say I'm picking up an order? Who has ever done that when they weren't picking up an order? So like you said, what difference does it make for one? That's like one thing. Like, what difference does it make? That's not what I said. But also, who would say that if they weren't? Anyway, so I'm like, no, I said I'm placing an order for a hoagie or whatever, but go off. So we have this little back and forth, and it gets to a point where she just stares at me. Like, she literally fucking stares at me, and this goes on for like an uncomfortable 12 seconds of her just looking at me, and I'm looking at her. I don't back down. We're staring at each other in the eyes. So she's like, so what do you want? I was like, I already told you I want a hoagie. And she's like, what size? I was like, Primo size. And she's like, what kind of hoagie? I was like, Turkey Diablo. She's like, what do you want on it? And so we have this really rude back and forth where I'm fucking hate ordering a hoagie right now, and she's hate taking the order. And my energy, like, I just felt so annoyed in this situation, and my rage was building up. I was like, yo, I fucking hate this bitch. Like, I really want you to get fired. So obviously, again, going back to the whole point, rating people, as soon as she walked away from the console, like that, to write my order, put it in the system or whatever, thank God somebody else in the kitchen was making my order. Because if it was her, I would have said absolutely fucking not. I'm not paying for that.
Way.
If she was making that my hoagie, there was no way in the world I was taking it. Anyway, so she puts my order in. She goes right back to watching her show. Mind you, she has the volume on blast. So whatever she's watching, I don't watch it. It was some reality TV show for sure, like Love Island or something.
She's watching it, what, on her phone?
She was watching, when I walked in, I interrupted her watching a show on her phone. That is the first thing. That was my fucking sin, that I walked in on her phone and disturbed her. So she wanted to be an asshole about that. And I guess that was why she had an attitude. It doesn't excuse her behavior at all. But she was just being a fucking bitch.
No, not at all. Dude, just as an aside, where I work, sometimes it's completely dead, right? As a bar. Sometimes it's dead. You're waiting for people to show up. And when it gets like that, you pull out your phone or whatever, and but as soon as a single person like walks up, you just like, hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Like, you're not like, you interrupted me watching fucking the Kardashians.
Her energy was very much, I am annoyed that you interrupted me. That's how it came off immediately. So after she walks away, I pull up my phone, I go on Google reviews, I find the exact location of this Primos, and I write a very long Google review while I'm in the store, standing there. I write this review the entire time because while my food's being made, I'm like, fuck it. I'm so annoyed right now. I'm so hot and my heart's pumping. Like, I'm just pissed. So I start writing this review and I go off. I describe her. I'm like, she's an oversized woman who fucking has braids going down her back, long ass fingernails, was on her phone the entire time when I walked in. Like, I had to basically ask for service. She didn't offer service when I walked in. I had to say like, hey, I wanted to place an order. And then she's like, you're picking up? And I was like, no, I'm placing an order. She's like, that's not what you said. So I literally put our conversation verbatim and quotes and everything. Like, I went detailed as fuck. And after I left the store, the second I walked out, I clicked send or post on Google.
Yep.
And I gave this location 1 star. Then my curiosity got to me and I said, let me actually check the Google reviews of this location because I noticed that the location had like a 2.7. Now,
damn.
I had gone to this Primos many times in the past because it's right down the street from my gym. So I know it's not the best, but sometimes I just have this craving for a hoagie. I'm a Philadelphian.
Yeah, man, hoagie's the shit.
Yes, I know it's not the healthiest thing, but who gives a fuck? Like, sometimes you just need it. So I left the gym, and on the way home, I pass Primos every single day. So I'm sitting there, like, looking at the reviews as I'm walking home, and I see the 2.7 score, and I was like, damn, that's actually really low for anything. So then I start looking at the reviews, obviously, and I see that people are talking about how unpleasant this certain woman. Now, the white people who were giving reviews were way more, what's the word I want to use? They were, what'd you say?
They had more decorum.
They had, it's, I want to say sneaky. They were not they were not as overt.
There was this very urban woman.
Yes. Very that, Kenny. Very urban use of that word. Like, they say urban music awards and stuff like that, which is just black. So very clearly, the people writing the reviews, I could tell like they were white people, and they were trying everything they could to say black without saying black. Meanwhile, here's me who's just like, yeah, I'm letting you know exactly because I'm black, right? So I feel like I can fucking say this. I'm also, I was born through a black woman, and I have a sister who's a black woman, and my aunts and everything are black women. I've been around black women my whole life, and I know when black women are being problematic, just like I know when black men are being problematic, and I'll check either of them, like, it doesn't matter. But her being that, my exact demographic, whatever, or like partially part of my demographic, made me really annoyed because there's already a stereotype. There's a stereotype blatantly. There's just a blatant stereotype about black people in customer service. And if you've never heard of it before, then you're living under a rock. But that's just a thing that exists. I know it exists, and it just sucks when it actually comes to fruition. So that annoyed me too. But as I was reading the reviews, I saw a bunch of them that were trying to be covert. That's the word I want to use. They were being covert about describing her and everything. But everyone said they had a very big problem with this woman. And I was like, oh, they're describing the exact person I just saw. Like, she's still there and she's dragging this business into the fucking ground. Like, literally, people probably don't go. And it was dead when I went in, and it was dead the entire time that the guy was in the back making my sandwich, and it was dead when I left, and it's dead every time I go in there. There's never really any business going on. I'm sure that they get orders. Like, my job is the kind of company that will, when we used to be in the office, they would order trays, like Primos trays. They slice up sandwiches, and somebody just walks in, grabs it, and leaves, right? And that's kind of like where they make a lot of their business. Individual people like me don't really, I guess, go there as much, especially that location, because the reviews are so goddamn bad, and having to interact with her is so unpleasant. I'd rather interact with an app or a kiosk. Replace that bitch with a kiosk and call it a day. I'm usually not for replacing humans with machines because I think that people need jobs. But like, she can go. If it's going to be her,
she can go.
She doesn't need to be in customer service at all because her attitude just sucked. So I would like to rate her. I would love if I could literally be like, what's your name? And she's like, my name is Quantisha. And I'm like, okay. And I just put her fucking Quantisha into my phone, pull her up, and then give her a 1 star and then describe why I'm giving her a 1 star. Because that entire, and she would do the same thing back to me, which is fine. That entire thing was so ridiculous. And what would happen is, hopefully, she would have a lot of bad reviews about her, and I wouldn't have nearly as many, or not many at all.
Depends on what era of Frasier.
That's why I laughed. That's why I laughed,
because if it's like 2011 Frasier, people might be lighting them up.
Might be no, if it's 2011 Frasier has a 0.4 out of 5. Like I'll
never
destroyed.
Forget, or I've told the story 100 times, but I'll never forget. You and me were in the Fresh Grocer, and there was another guy standing there that we like played Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't remember who he was at all. Like if he walked in front of me, I wouldn't remember that it was this person. But I remember he was mad at you for something. And he goes, "You think you're so special on your high horse." He's like, "You think you're up on your high horse." I remember him like saying high horse over and over. He's like, and I'm just standing next, and I'm holding like the Fresh Grocer had, like, speaking of hoagies, gigantic overstuffed hoagies.
Yes,
I'm just holding like an overstuffed fucking hoagie, hanging out with my boy Frasier, and this guy is livid. He's like, he's pissed. You and your high horse.
He was really
just
mad.
So mad.
And what was I doing? Because I already know. Like I probably
you were just like smirking at him, and I think you said something like, "Oh yeah," like you said, whatever the fuck you said.
Yeah,
like,
something that made it sound like I was indifferent to his
like
problem.
You probably said something along the lines like, "Yeah, I'm above you. Like, that's why my horse is so high." Like, you probably said some dumb shit like
something ignorant as fuck, because that's just who I was for sure.
But
oh man,
to kind of wrap up that notion, so we can actually talk about the episodes of this season. I think another thing is that when you have hate in your heart, when you have that anger, you need to like vent it. You need to get that energy out. Yes. Whereas like if you had a pleasant experience with that woman, that's a pleasant experience you would have in the moment, and you would live your life in that moment. And you, like, as humans and as people, I think we enjoy and like we share that pleasant experience back and forth, and like we enjoy that, right? But when you have that horrible experience you just have, you end up getting this anger, and you need to fucking get out some way, and you can't hit the person.
Yeah.
And so you go up, and that's when you start disliking shit or whatever. Like, for example, I dislike way more YouTube videos than I like.
Me too, bro. Because I do not really like videos.
Yeah, I don't really ever like a video, but if there's a video and I know I don't want to see this video or videos like it again, I make sure I dislike it. I dislike it, and then I hit the YouTube, like, do not recommend videos like this.
Yeah,
like,
I do the same thing.
I don't want to see this shit.
And there might be a conversation that we could have at a later date about how hate kind of fuels motivates you more than other things. Because I think that's kind of what we're getting at. Like, in that moment, I hated her, and I hated the experience so much that I was fueled to write my first ever Google review. Do you know? Because like I never wrote a Google review before in my life. This happened like 2 months ago or 3 months ago now. It was in a winter because I remember having a coat on. Do you know I've never written a Google review, and I didn't even know the process for it. Like you have to connect and
figure the process.
There's
out. Not you being so angry. I'm gonna fucking walk out. Like, not you being so angry while also troubleshooting.
Yes. Like at no point did my anger subside while I had to figure out how to do a Google review, because it's not as simple as just like start writing and then you could just post it. It doesn't work like that. You have to connect your account to Google reviews, and then it tells you that your shit's going to be public. Like this review will be tied to your Google account, and your Google account, is public. Like it's going to be, somebody's going to see it and be able to click on you and see whatever reviews you've written, see kind of demographic stats about you. They won't be able to see like literally who you are unless your name is literally Fraser Smith on there, but they'll be able to see certain things about you. And that made me a little uncomfortable. So I was like, okay, let me sign into an alt. And I wrote everything out. But yeah, that whole thing, unpleasant. So, all right, let's get into Black Mirror finally. And the good thing is episode 1 of season 6 is called Joan is Awful.
Yeah, it's like,
it kind of
Black Mirror has, it has its own like cooking formula. So this all ties right into what we're doing already.
Yes, it's cool because even this season, the first 3 episodes, they have a lot of references to older stuff. And older Black
even
Mirror
have
stuff.
References in its own. So I don't know if you noticed
season.
Yeah, I didn't notice this until so basically we watched, it was me, Connie, Cheyenne. We watched the whole season in like a night and a morning. Like we watched like 2 episodes at night, and we watched the rest of the episodes like the next morning before I went to work. It was like the night after the season came out.
Yeah.
So anyway, we watched it. We watched Joan is Awful. We watched Henry Loch or Loach or whatever the fuck it's called.
Yeah, I know that one too.
And then Beyond the Sea, right? Which are the first 3 episodes what we're going to talk about today. So anyway, we watched those 3, and then we watch all the episodes, and then we go back and we're just talking about like, oh, which one was your favorite? Which one, like if you rank them all, like blah blah blah. And then Cheyenne had some criticisms of Joan is Awful. And so we went back and we like kind of skipped through the episode. And while doing that, I was like, holy shit. When they show the Netflix, aka Streamberry, when they showed like the UI for that, there's the Henry Loach documentary is there. Like when
Yes.
she's looking for something to watch, like that documentary is there. And then like there's other shows or references to Black Mirror that are there on like the Streamberry Netflix UI for things that you can watch. And I thought it was so cool because like episode 2 is like the making of this documentary.
You're
And then
right.
like that documentary is on Netflix on the episode 1. I don't know. I just thought like little shit like that's really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. Obviously, when I was watching episode 1, I didn't know that episode 2 was being referenced already. So it was one of those kind of things that you could see on a rewatch or whatever, or if you like saw all the names of the episodes. I think that is really cool how they did that. Because it's one of those things that I always love when you watch something again, you see things that you did not see the first time or couldn't possibly have known about the first time either.
Yeah, yeah.
So I like this episode 1, Joan is Awful. Essentially, the main theme of it is the main character is a girl named Joan, and she's like a boss at some company. And it starts off with like her firing somebody, and the person is pleading to not be fired, right? Like they're kind of like, please don't do this. I just put a down payment on a new apartment. All these bad things have happened to me. Like I need this job. Like I cannot afford to lose this job. Also, I made this really cool thing for the company that'll save it a lot of money and make it a lot of money and do all these cool things. And I did all this stuff. And like, I'm telling you while I'm a worthy employee, and she's pleading. And Joan is just like, yeah, sorry, but no one cares about any of that stuff. And the girl's like, wait, Joan, seriously? And then Joan just takes like another call or whatever and leaves the girl in the office and goes to get security to escort her out while she kind of sidesteps the whole situation so she doesn't have to face this employee who's obviously emotional in the moment. Also, I'm sorry to get sidetracked here, but like the idea of being fired, I've never been fired. Let's start there. And I've seen people be fired in my life. I've been working for 11 years. Yeah, 11 years I've been working full time as an accountant. I've seen people get fired multiple times now. And it is extremely embarrassing and sometimes gut wrenching because for some reason at the company I work at now, every time I've seen somebody get fired, I'm really good friends with the person. Like, or if I'm not good friends with them, like I talk to them on a regular basis enough to where their firing affects me because I just feel like, shit, man, that really sucked. So I don't like it in general. And I always thought it was so embarrassing when in an office setting, you have to like pack your shit into a box. And I think that is just like one of the most embarrassing things that a human could go through where you're just standing up, putting your things, your belongings, like all your pictures, they take their pictures down, they're putting stuff inside of a box, they're opening their drawers to make sure they didn't leave any like sentimental or valuable things. People have pictures of their children up, they have pictures of holiday parties at the company, they have all types of stuff to make the office feel like home. And this is another reason why I'm against office culture in general and just working in the office for honestly any amount of time, but I get like hybrid roles and stuff like that. But I just hate the whole office stuff because even like getting fired, I think is something that should not be so, it shouldn't be as embarrassing as it is, but it fucking is. And I never want that to be me where I've seen people have to be escorted out because they got really like the girl in Black Mirror, they've gotten very emotional. And so it requires like people to come over and be like, hey, we're going to have to ask you to leave now. And we don't want to have to like escalate the situation. And I just hate that. So as this girl in the beginning of the episode is pleading her case, I got like this really cringy feeling of, oh God, I hate seeing this. Like this, I've seen it before. Yeah. I've been next to it. In fact, I'll just give a little thing. Go ahead.
The other thing that just sucks is that it's so impersonal because Joan says in that moment, like the higher ups, like she's basically a middleman in this scenario, and she's just like, yeah, like the company's letting you go, and so the girl, I don't remember her name, the girl's pleading with Joan, like, please, like, you know, like I invited you to my party, I invited you to this, I just put a down payment on the apartment, whatever. She's pleading to Joan, but the thing that sucks is like she's literally pleading to a wall because Joan has no power or authority to let her keep her job,
right?
And it's like that's that impersonal like business like corporate culture where it's like,
I hate it.
The people that are firing you don't even have the fucking gall to be the ones to fire you. They make someone else do it so that there can be a barrier between them and you.
Yep.
And it's just like
dirty work.
It's just really messy and dirty. Yeah. I just
sending someone to do your dirty work. It's gross.
And so that's another part that made it like cringy because on one end you're watching it cringy, not cringy in the TikTok meme word of cringy as in the actual use of the word.
Yeah.
Cringy in that like you're watching it and you're like, oh my God, like you feel bad for this girl because like you can see and understand what she's going through. But then at the same time, you're like, it sucks because you're pleading to no one. Like, you're pleading and like you're just.
And that's what made it hard to
time.
watch. To me, in this frame one, episode one, basically, like there was some other stuff in the episode before that, I think, when her husband really
like
talked.
She was driving her car like I don't know, singing Cardi B or something.
Yeah, she was definitely singing some rap shit, and
she was wilding.
There's a white female singing like this ratchet ass Cardi B song. It sounds, or not literally Cardi B, but some ratchet ass song she was singing along to, and it didn't fit her. If I had to look at her and stereotype her, it did not fit her demographic that she'd be listening to the song she was listening to. But anyway, so the other thing that I wanted to say about this whole thing is, in my experience, I wanted to share one of them where somebody got fired. So this girl sat next to me, and she had gotten fired. So she went away from her desk for a while, as this is how it always happens. It's early morning. She left her desk. She comes back to her desk, and she starts opening drawers and like grabbing things out the drawers. And I can just, so I'm not really looking in her direction, because normally I just wouldn't be doing that unless we were talking. And me and her do talk. We sat right next to each other, so me and her talk when we feel like it. But I wouldn't just be looking at her just because she returned to her desk. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until I started hearing like the sound of the way the drawers were closing, like opening and closing.
Yeah.
So then I look over, and she's like, she doesn't even have a box. She has a plastic bag, like a thank you plastic bag. And she's putting stuff in the bag. And I'm looking at her, and I don't say anything because my heart starts beating fast, because I think what is happening is what's happening, but I'm not 100% sure. So then one of the vice presidents, it's a woman, vice president of finance, she comes over to her and she goes, "Can you just go?" Just like that. And
oh my God.
The girl who's putting her belongings away looks up at her, because she's seated at her cubicle at this time. She looks up at her and she goes, "I'm getting my things." And the lady goes, "But can you just go? We can just send you your things in the mail." She's like, "No, I'm getting my things." So she goes back to grabbing her things and putting them in the bag at her own like pace. And the lady who's standing there kind of huffs and puffs, but she doesn't. I was afraid that it was going to escalate right there. I was like, oh, she's going to call the cops. She's going to go get security. Fortunately, it didn't go as south as it felt like it was going to go, because the tension, you could cut it with a fucking knife. How
can you tell someone? I'll just say, like, you ain't sending me shit. All right, I'm getting like, that is insane.
That's common.
Like, I'm getting my shit. Way, you know what I mean?
Kenny, that is common practice, and this is also why in any office that I've ever, and he's like, no,
dude, I would get blackballed in the industry. Thank God I've never gotten into the office jobs, because they would have just blackballed me. Because
well, here's the thing.
If I got fired one time, I
get you, King.
So I would have been, and if they came up to me like, "Can you just go?" I would have been like, "Excuse me, what? Did I mishear you? Just go. We'll send you your things." I'm like, "You ain't sending me my DS. You ain't putting my DS in the mail.
Like that's where this is going.
What is wrong with you?"
Yeah, and that's basically how she felt.
The fuck?
So, okay, I agree with everything you just said, and this is why in the office I look like a psychopath, because all of my coworkers have a ton of personal items in their desk. Like at their desk, they have pictures, they have all types of little eagles and phillies and just a lot of things that say like, this is my home at work. They have a lot of things. They have action figures. So one girl has every Pops figure from The Walking Dead. Another guy has every Game of Thrones Pops figure that he could get his hands on, and his desk looks really cool. It has all this Game of Thrones stuff on it. Basically, I'm him. I just refuse to ever bring that shit into the office. I feel the same way, if not more, about Game of Thrones that he does, but I will never. And it's only because of the experience I had when I first started working in 2022 or 2012. Sorry, when I first started working in 2012, it's the experience I had where I saw someone get fired early in my career, and it was so like seeing them carry that box and putting all their shit in there, and the sound of it, and how many things they had to take down off the walls, and all the thumbtacks they had to pull out to get their shit. Seeing them do that made me think to myself, oh, I'm never decorating a cube. I'm never bringing a bunch of personal items into the office, so that when that day eventually comes, I'm standing there with a bunch of shit that I have to pack. My desk at work has absolutely nothing on it, to the point where when I'm not there, people would use my desk. Like if they were a guest in the office, they would use my desk because it looked like basically we actually have certain desks in the office that are assigned to just guests. Like they can just use it.
Yeah.
So we have that. So my desk looks like one of those, the temporary stations that a guest would use, because there's nothing personal on it. You can't tell that it belongs to me outside of the company name tag that they put on there when you get hired. They literally put your name on the desk, like on the side of it, basically, where people hang up all these personal items. They put your shit there. They put Fraser Smith, so it says it right there. But other than that, everything about my desk, nothing personal is there. There's no pictures. There's no action figures. There's no anything. There's nothing. There's no sports teams, nothing. So if I ever were to leave, I could just grab my actual bag that I come in with that has all my personal shit in it. I could just grab my bag and walk out. Like I would just literally, like if I ever got fired, I'm just grabbing my bag and walking out. That's all I need. Like I don't need to do anything else.
I'd have a fucking an extra GameCube there. I'd have a GameCube in my drawer. You know what I mean? I'd be fucking set up.
And I get it. That's why you're like, absolutely not. You're not mailing me anything. And that's so I feel the same way as you. And my way to deal with that was just prevention. That was my way of dealing. But imagine me not having that early experience in 2012, seeing someone have a box, getting fired, pulling thumbtacks out, pulling pictures down of them and their kids, them and their wife at Disney World, seeing all of that, right? I've never seen that. So then I just do what every other person does, and they just like hang up a ton of shit that says, this is my home, this is my desk. And then they get fired and I get fired and I have to do that. It's just such an embarrassing, it's kind of dehumanizing in a way because all of the employees are there around you while it's happening. Like all of your coworkers are just there while that's it's just so bad, man. So yeah, Joan is Awful starts off like that, and I guess we just kind of went on a long tangent about it, but it's really, really good. Just the way the episode opens. Anyway, so another big part about her character, Joan, is that she is like, I don't want to say is low-key, she's cheating on her husband. And she's been texting an ex-boyfriend who apparently she had a very hot relationship with, where like they had good chemistry. He had good sexual chemistry with her, but they were terrible for each other. But they were together for years. And we all have that one ex, at least I know I do, and I know a lot of people who also do, that one ex that like, they just kind of got you in a way, and you like the familiarity of them, but you know that they're not good for you. So she has this thing going on where her current husband, boyfriend, or whatever is boring as fuck. She talks about how his food is unseasoned just like him. His music taste is unseasoned. Everything about the guy, he's bland. And she
wait real quick. There's a part where she goes home and like he makes food for her or whatever, and she eats it and she goes, "Oh, what is that? Salt?" Like
yes,
there's something like that happens. She goes, "Oh, like, I don't." Oh my god,
it was so petty the way she just like, what is that, salt? And it's the most basic thing, right? Because salt should just be in your food. I don't care what anyone says. Like I'm here for a good time, not a long time, and I want to enjoy the things that I'm going to ingest. So she makes a comment about like he put salt in there, and that's obviously a dig. But she confides in her ex, which I think is one of the worst things that people do. I do not do this. If I'm with someone and I'm friends with an ex, or like I talk to an ex after or during a relationship or something like that, I would never confide in that person about my current relationship. I think that's just like the wrong thing to do in general. You do not give somebody like that ammo. It's one thing to even be talking to your ex in the first place, but some people are cool. Like, I don't care if you guys are friends or whatever. Like, I trust you. Like if I don't trust you, then what's the point of us being together? It's kind of how, the guys that I've dealt with in the past have felt. Some of them are very territorial and like, no, cut him off, delete all your pictures. And I'm like, whoa, slow down. Anyways, so she has a whole dinner date with her ex and they start to get carried away. He starts to kiss on her and she has to pull away from him and be like, no, I'm sorry. I gave the wrong idea. I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm a terrible person. Just like she's having remorse about what she's doing. She's cheating and she's having remorse about it. And after she leaves, she gets home and there's a show on the Fate Netflix, Streamberry. There's a show on there called Joan is Awful. And she's like, damn, that girl like looks like me. She has the person on the thumbnail and in the trailer that's playing. On Netflix just starts playing the trailer, which I stopped it from doing. I hate that. But Netflix just starts playing a trailer of a show while you're hovering over the icon. She's like, that girl looks just like me. She has the same hairstyle. And the main character's hairstyle is so unique. She has basically dark brown or black hair and then it has like blonde in it. So it's a very
blonde, like front bangs.
Yes. So it's a very unique hairstyle that like when you look at the fact that this show is called Joan is Awful, her name is Joan, and the girl has the same exact hairstyle, and her boyfriend's like, hey, that kind of looks like you.
And she's wearing her clothes, like the clothes she wore to work, like it's the same clothes.
Yeah, so she starts freaking out a little bit, like, what the fuck is this? So they start watching it, obviously, because how could you not? If I saw a show that was called Frasier is Awful, and it was some other black guy, now it's not exactly her, so it wouldn't exactly be me, but it was just a black guy.
Yeah, it was Selma Hayek.
Yeah, it was... It was just randomly Selma Hayek. If I just saw, like, I don't know, Nick Cannon fucking playing me, I'd be like, what is going on? Like, he's just literally in my exact clothes. Like, you guys know how I dress. So imagine Nick Cannon in my outfit. He got the waves, everything about me, right? So Imagine seeing a famous actor playing you. So you have to watch it. So they start watching it, which is a big mistake, but it's Netflix, right? So they watch it and everything about, so let's talk about this a little bit. The UI and everything is a ripoff of Netflix. But I think it's really cool that they have this like little digs at themselves. Cause this whole episode to me was like a dig at Netflix itself.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk about that too, but they start to poke fun at themselves in a weird way. So when she starts watching the show, everything that happens in her life in the morning with her husband being boring, her firing that girl, the super gay friend that she has who doesn't think that he is as...
I love the scene where the gay friend is with his boyfriend and they're watching Jonah's Awful. And so he sees the actor that plays him. And he's like, they got the gayest person ever to play me.
It's like actually a point. Like I wasn't just calling him like super gay. They actually make it a point in the narrative that he is super gay. And he doesn't think he is. So when he sees the actor playing him, he's like, I am not that gay. So it's really funny. Like it's just such a funny thing. But they show everything that you watched in the first like 10 minutes. You just watch it again, but with different characters playing the exact same role. And some of the language and some of the things are actually different. So you could tell that it's derived from, but not verbatim. It's not an exact replica. Like when she fires the girl, the things that are said are slightly different, but
yeah, they definitely make her look a little worse. Like
yes,
like to be fair, she wasn't great the first time, but like when you see it in the show of the show, it's like they make it sound worse. Yeah,
Salma Hayek cuts when she talks to the girl. She says, "Unfortunately, nobody cares." You know, the first Joan did not say nobody cares. She said, unfortunately, the higher ups, they made this decision. There's really nothing that we could do. Our hands are tied. Like she tried to make it sound really soft. But when you see Salma Hayek do it, she just straight up says like, no one cares. She calls security, like, get her out of here. You know, like the tone is way different. And that's kind of to show you how reality TV or shows in general just kind of dramatize things. Mm-hmm. And with proper editing, which reality TV is notorious for, with proper editing, you can make anyone out to be a villain. You could just make someone out, like if you just take things out of context, you could make someone look terrible. And so that's kind of what's happening with this Jonah's Awful show that they're watching. And so the girl, the main character, she's like, what the fuck? That's not even how that happened. I did not say that. And I did not do, it wasn't like that. And she's trying to explain like, yo, I'm really not this poor. And her boyfriend's kind of like, he thinks it's a joke, but she doesn't.
Yeah.
So as you're watching this in the back of my mind, I was like, oh God, what about the part where she cheats on him? Because certainly that has to be coming up. And lo and behold, one of the scenes later down the road is her going to a restaurant with her ex who is sexually compatible with her. And they have this conversation. So everything else has been true up until this point. So when it gets to the restaurant with the ex scene, her boyfriend looks at her like, or her husband looks at her like, what the fuck? And she's like, this is not real. Like, that did not happen. None of this happened.
Yeah.
And he's looking at her like, well, that doesn't make any sense because literally everything else we watched, you've been opposed to what happened. You said it happened, but it didn't happen like that. Now we're watching another thing, which I assume happened, maybe not exactly that way, but like, yes, it did happen. So he doesn't believe her, of course, and she's freaking out. And it kind of starts this whole spiral thing where she wants to sue Netflix/Streamberry. Now, I think this is what the point of the episode is. When's the last time you read the terms and conditions on anything, Kenny?
Yeah, pretty much never. It's funny because when I saw this, the first thing I thought of was the Human Centipede episode from South Park. Do you remember that episode?
Yes.
And if I remember correctly, the whole point of that episode was like they signed up for like, I don't know, iTunes or something, right. And they didn't read the terms and conditions. And then in the terms and conditions, it said that like they could just make you part of this human centipede or something.
Yes,
like I don't remember exactly how it went, but yeah, it was something like that.
It got really bad. So I haven't read the terms and conditions on anything basically in my life. I think I've read, there was one time in my life where I did blatantly read the terms and conditions on something. It was definitely an Apple thing too. Like 100% it was something Apple. And I don't know what made me do it, but I said, I never read these. So let me just check. And I started skimming and reading and skimming.
That doesn't work. I tried that. I got like 2 lines down. I was like, oh, fuck this.
I actually went through every section and just skimmed and read enough to where I saw what they were saying. And I never did ever again. Now I've been alive for a good amount of time, and to have only read it once out of my entire life is pretty fucking awful. But that is just human nature. No one reads the terms and conditions on anything. That's kind of the point. Only lawyers read that shit. So when she goes to sue, the lawyer is telling her like, hey, just by the way, you actually can't sue them because they own the rights to your image and likeness. They can actually do whatever they want because you signed this paper. So he pushes the paper forward, or she or whatever, the lawyer does, and she looks at it and her signature's there and it says like, yeah, we can use your image and likeness to do whatever we want, blah, 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 a bunch of legal jargon that nobody really knows except lawyers again. And she's like, well, that's bullshit. Like, what? Then I'll just sue. She's like, then I'll sue this or I'll do this. And they're like, actually, you can't do that either. There's a clause in this that says you can't sue for this reason.
It's airtight. There's nothing she can do about it.
Every time she suggests something, she's like, well, then I'll fucking sue you. It's just like, oh, okay. Like she blows up on a lawyer after a while. And it's like, I don't advise you do that, but okay. So the whole point is that Netflix has the ability to just take your image and likeness once you sign over your rights to it, and use it for whatever they want to. And there's really nothing you can do about it. And the episode progresses. It starts to get a little out of hand. Like Joan realizes that whatever she does in her real life, it kind of happens on this TV show. So she doesn't want to be recorded anymore or have her life, blasted to everyone like that. So what she does is she starts to do like vile things. One of the things that she does is she goes to, is it a church that she goes to?
Yeah, so she does. I thought this part was kind of smart on her. If the intention was what I got from it, right? She realizes Selma Hayek is the actor, right?
Right.
And there's nothing she can do. So she kind of goes crazy. She eats like a bunch of Big Macs. She eats like fucking 15 Big Macs. Right. And then she takes laxatives. And then she goes to a church. And she has like a dick drawn on her head.
Yeah, it's
and
wild.
She fucking,
it's so wild.
She just like fucking diarrhea shits all in this church. And it's like filled with people getting married or something, right? And this ends up causing Salma Hayek to be like, what the fuck? You guys are... Because what another reveal ends up being, Salma Hayek isn't the actor. She sold her likeness, her digital image, so that Netflix can make shows using her likeness and they would pay her, but she doesn't actually have to be it. Right. So this AI-generated digital image of Salma Hayek is now shitting all over a church. This pisses her off, and now she wants to sue Netflix because she's like, I did not approve of this whenever this happened. And then she finds out there's nothing she can do because she didn't read the terms and conditions. And basically, like, it causes this whole thing where Salma Hayek ends up finding Joan, and like they end up kind of buddying up.
Yeah, they team up together to take down Streamberry.
If I understand it the way I think Joan did that on purpose, like
she did
try to get Salma Hayek to like be like, well, maybe she can sue them and maybe she can get this fucking show to stop. Yes. I don't know.
And then Salma Hayek, when she watches the show Joan is Awful, she sees another famous actress playing her.
Yeah.
And you find out. So
I forget who they say it was. I forget who the other actor was. But yeah, it is another famous actor.
Yes. So someone's playing her as well. So it ends up being an episode where Michael Cera's randomly in it too. They kind of storm the headquarters of Streamberry, and they're trying to get to the control room or whatever to shut this whole fucking thing down because nothing else is working. They try to sue, doesn't work. They try to do unsightly things like shitting in churches and all that, and it's like, well, this is just making the ratings go even higher. Like, this is not the effect that you would hope it has. Is not really having it. Salma Hayek complaining in real life about her AI doing these unsightly things that she would never do, would never agree to do, also is not working. So they team up together to go to Netflix's headquarters and stop it. They run into Michael Cera randomly from Superbad, if you know that amazing movie. And we definitely will do a podcast on Superbad one day because I love that movie down. Like, that's one of my favorite comedy movies ever. It's so fucking funny. But they run into the control room, they see him, and they find out that neither one of them is the real Joan. They're actually the actress playing the original Joan. So the way it works is there's like layers. There's base Joan, I forget if that's what they call Source Joan, I think is what they...
Yeah.
There's Source Jones, that's the original Joan. Michael Cera tells the main character, you're not even the Source Joan, right? Like, you basically don't have free will because everything that you do is based off of what Source Joan did. And she's like, what? I'm not the original Joan. She's like, no, you're not. And then that's when it makes sense that Salma Hayek is playing the one that you know as the first Joan, and then someone is playing Salma Hayek even deeper in that. And I guess it just keeps on going. But they eventually, realize, okay, if I don't have free will, then whatever I do is predetermined. Like, everything I'm doing is what the Source Joan would have done. So they start destroying everything. And then the main character that you've been watching this whole time, she's like, it doesn't matter what I want to do. It's already been determined. Joan has already did this. So she destroys like the system or whatever. And then you see Source Joan and she is, for lack of a better term, she isn't nearly as attractive as
the
one who plays the main character.
She looks more regular. She doesn't look like a Hollywood person. She has a more regular girl next door kind of look. And then, yeah, I think you were about to say Selma Hayek turns into the Joan that we thought was Joan at the first time, but now
yes,
she's in Selma Hayek's position because she's actually another well-known actor
she
whose
is. Yeah,
name I don't know.
yeah. Everyone in the show, outside of the very like Source Joan, everyone else I know them pretty much, and I've seen them in other things. Source Joan, I don't recognize her. Like Kenny said, she looks very regular, for lack of a better term. Like she does just look like like you said, girl next door. She doesn't look like anything special. Definitely not Hollywood level beauty or anything like that. I don't even think she was wearing makeup, to be honest. She just had the same hairstyle. She was even like a little heavier, I want to say, but she is seemingly happy that they destroyed everything, and she's in therapy talking about her life. And it kind of just like ends on that note of her being free from it, I think, is like the main takeaway. So it actually had a happy ending, which is something you don't typically see in Black Mirror. Black Mirror tends to end in really bad ways, or like ways that are ambiguous, but this one was like, no, the Source Joan kind of accomplished her goal of getting out of this hamster wheel lifestyle that she's in.
Yeah, and the episode overall is interesting. Like, it's like a message on like fucking consumerism and content creation and AI generation.
Yes, and
that's what it all is. It's like AI generated content creation, and people just ingesting fucking content, whatever it is. And
salacious content just because it's salacious.
Yep.
So I like that Netflix, showed how terrible they can be. Because they were blatantly poking at themselves, and kind of multiple episodes do that. Episode 2 does it too, and we'll get to that in a second.
The end of episode 2 does this. Yeah, does this as well.
I think you say the end. I was like the whole thing. We talk about Lock Henry in a second, but so episode 1 is all about like no one reads the terms and conditions, and companies can take advantage of you. Now in real life, obviously they can't actually do that because of contracts in general. They have to be conscionable, and if a contract is unconscionable, then it can't really be agreed upon. So, for example, I cannot say to Kenny, sign this contract where every living wage that you make for the rest of your life goes to me. And then you sign it at your big age, and now for the rest of your life, I just get all of your income. That's just not a reasonable thing to sign away to another person. I don't give a fuck how much you like someone, you love someone, whatever. You cannot sign over every dollar that you make from this day forward to me. Under any circumstances, can I take that to court and be like, but he signed it? That even were like, even if Kenny was like, I did sign it, I don't know why, but I did at one time feel this way about him, and I signed this contract. This is ridiculous. Like, this is fucking ridiculous. So contracts don't just work like put anything in it, sign it, and it's just now held up by law. That's not how that works. Yeah. But it is cool because Black Mirror always pushes things to the extreme. And so this episode pushes the whole no one reads the terms and conditions to the extreme of like, what could they do theoretically if they do have your image and likeness? Because that's the big conversation in Hollywood right now, is that actors and actresses have been signing away their image and likeness so that these companies can use it, but they're not getting residuals for that. They're not getting anything on the back end. It's kind of just like, oh, we'll pay you this amount, but then we get to use you forever and not even have to. So we pay you this one-time thing, and now we can just make movies with your image. We can make Will Smith movies for the rest of our life.
Yeah, another thing that they touch on really quick is like how, because I think at one point they're curious, like how the fuck did they get the dialogue or whatever? And part of what they signed away is like, they can use like your phone and shit, your phone's microphone to just record what you're saying at any point in time. And what's crazy is like that. First of all, that's something that people speculate right now actually happens, where like you say something and then you get a targeted ad about that thing and you didn't look it up. But also every app you download asks for permissions. Can I use these things? And there's been a lot of times where people have gone in and been like, hey, the fucking permissions this app is asking to use make like this app doesn't utilize these things. Why the fuck is it asking for these permissions? Right. Like, and then apps have had to go back and like reveal why they did it and like take away the like getting permission for those things so that they aren't allowed to use them and all this crazy shit. But the point is, like, you could download something and it says like permission to use your camera, blah blah blah, and your microphone, and like you say yes, it's like Instagram or whatever to like make a reel, and then like they could just fucking record you or like turn your camera on or something. Obviously Instagram, as far as we know, doesn't do that, but the point is someone could do that.
Yes, and we already know, because it is speculated that our phones are listening, but all the technology I think is listening to us, because like you said, you'll have a conversation about something, never type it into Google or anything, you open your phone and you'll blatantly see it. We know also for a fact though that technology is listening, because all of our devices now, you can wake them up with a virtual assistant.
Yeah.
Like right now, if I say Alexa, like she activated just now on my desk.
Yeah, the ring's lit up or whatever.
Yeah, like she's blue, like she just turned blue and she was ready. And that means that she's always waiting, right? She's listening. Like you have to, in order to hear me say that name, she has to be listening at all times. There's a constant listening happening. Same thing with my phone. If I say, "Hey Siri," my phone light it lit up just now, and it's waiting for me to say something to like give it a command or whatever. That's just how it works. So it's, again, my phone has been listening to me talk to you for the last hour about this, and it's still not going away. Okay, there we go. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that is a good point about how people feel that way. And I think that the lawyer said something about that, like, oh yeah, you know how that thing is when you talk about something with your friends and then you go on an app and then you see that exact thing you were talking about and you make the joke about like, how they're listening to us. He's like, yeah, that's real. Just like casually just said it, like, yeah, that's a real thing. So yeah, that was episode 1. All right, episode 2 I thought was really cool because it wasn't even the same type of episodes that Black Mirror typically does. This one was a murder mystery type of thing, or like a unsolved mysteries, or some kind of like a case about a serial killer, and it had the vibe of a suspense mystery serial killer type of show. Yeah. Also while being kind of like a documentary at the same time. And what I thought was cool about that is, again, Netflix, like Black Mirror, typically it does have a certain feel to the episodes, despite the fact they're all different. There is a formula kind of going on there. So this one, where it's blatantly about like, oh, a Jeffrey Dahmer type of person who existed in Europe. To be specific, I actually found out that episode 2, Lock Henry, is based on a real thing. I didn't know that when I was watching it. They said that you would not know it if you live outside of the UK or live outside of Europe. Yeah. They said that in Europe, everyone knows about this person who was killing people and doing these things. But they said that if you're outside of Europe, it's not a big deal. It's not a big story. It didn't make like global news, right? And I wonder, I was like, damn, I wonder if Jeffrey Dahmer is known about in Europe. You know what I mean?
Maybe pre-Netflix, right? Pre-Netflix Jeffrey Dahmer, if he was known, or Manson,
right,
or like Son of Sam, like the all the names that we know of, the Zodiac Killer,
right?
Like, are they known of in Europe or wherever
outside of the United States? So that did make me think like, oh shit, I guess that I guess that does make sense that certain serial killers and stuff like that, certain stories don't make it out of our news, even though they're such a big part of American society, because Dahmer is a huge part of American society, unfortunately, or at least like the history of him. Anyways, so episode 2 focuses around this kid who he has this girlfriend, and she's pretty quirky. They're doing a documentary, and they chose to do it on some like random. What was the original thing that they wanted to do it on?
I don't remember, but something I really like about this episode is the idea of it, right? They wanted to do a documentary, I don't know, some nature thing. Maybe
some random shit that
some random thing, right? Yeah. Just like some random documentary that they wanted to do.
It doesn't even matter because they don't do it on that anyway.
Yeah, they don't. And so while they're making that documentary or preparing to make it, you kind of find out that like the main boy character, his dad died or whatever, was a cop and was, I think, a victim of the serial killer. And the serial killer, played a part. And then they end up kind of doing a documentary on the serial killer.
Yes. His girlfriend convinces him. She keeps prying to get him to actually do the documentary on that because it's so much more interesting and it will go so much further than whatever the hell bullshit they wanted to originally do.
They were fucking talking about.
It just wasn't.
And then he's got his friend, which I think was Podrick from Game of Thrones.
Was that Pod?
I think that was Pod, yeah.
Oh man, I'm
pretty sure that was Pod.
Yo, I didn't, because
I think that was.
Bro, the way he was talking was so wild to me. First of all, he was being racist and homophobic and transphobic, and that shit was hilarious. And not to say that those things are innately funny, but because
but it's the way he was doing.
The way he did it was comical. Like it wasn't like Netflix was like punching down and actually attacking, people for being gay or trans or whatever. It was more so like, this is a real person that everyone knows exists. Like in real life, that there's a guy out there who talks like this. He was like, "Oh yeah, what should I call you? Like they, them, or something?" Now, like he was on one.
Wild.
He was on one.
That was
and the girlfriend being black. The fact that she was black,
she was like so awkward. Like There was a part, I don't remember what she was like, it would have been weird if they named it after me or something. Like, I forget.
Yes, because her name is also pretty, like, it's a, a Blackish name and everything about it. The way he was talking to her, he said, "Oh yeah, I know how like you people like to get down." Or he said something crazy. He was just being a fucking bigot in every way that it's to the point where it was so over the top that you're like, no one is actually like this, but I get it. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Like,
But something cool that happens, right, is that they go in for one documentary and they end up making another documentary. And then, spoiler alert, it ends up becoming another documentary by the end of it, which is really interesting. And something I think I talked about this in podcast before, but whatever, you guys are used to hearing me say that. There was the documentary that was made about a guy who wanted to like do a bike marathon, like do like a really big bike race, right? And then he wanted to figure out, like, he just went into it trying to figure out how to like become a really good biker or whatever. And in doing that, he started trying, like, I don't think actual steroids, but certain performance enhancers to make it easier and to see what he can do in terms of biking. And he was like, doping, I think that's adding oxygen to your blood in order to like bike more. In making this documentary, he ends up accidentally uncovering a huge steroid like cover up in Russia for the Russian Olympics.
Wow.
So like while he's making this biking documentary, he ends up uncovering this huge fucking Russian steroid Olympic thing. And then they end up threatening his life and he has to like get secretly flown out of Russia. It like all this crazy shit ends up happening. And that's not how the documentary started. So I just, stuff like that is so fucking, like, imagine making a documentary about whatever, and then in the documentary you fucking find a serial killer or something. Like, just
that's
and the
really
documentary
cool.
becomes something else is insane. Like, it's just such a cool concept.
So at the end of it, and we're not going to jump there just yet, but you mentioned a little earlier about how Netflix, like, pokes fun at itself by the end of this thing. But I was saying that I think it does it kind of immediately, because when Dahmer came out on Netflix, it was a lot of conversation happening around, is this ethical to even be doing a Netflix show, what does he call it? A dramatization, right? You have this really famous actor, Evan Peters, who plays in American Horror Story. That's what he's mainly known for. And he also was like in Marvel movies and stuff like that. I think he played Magneto's son, Quicksilver.
Okay.
So Evan Peters is, So anyway, fuck, I lost my train of thought. Hold on.
Basically, we're saying Netflix already does this. They were poking fun of themselves.
Right. So the dramatization aspect of making a Dahmer show, right, that is meant to get views and cause a reaction out of people who just want to watch something new on Netflix and trend and all of those things, right? And it's a true story that this person killed 17 Black and Hispanic people in a very short amount of time, like in a couple years. Murder 17 people, 17 minorities. And 17 minorities murdered by Jeffrey Dahmer over a short period. And it's a horrible tragedy in American history. One of the most prolific serial killers in all of history, I would say, at this point. And the families, because this isn't that long ago, I found, like, Dahmer's not even that long ago.
No, it's not.
Like, me and Kenny
were alive.
We were alive.
Yeah.
So it's crazy to think that, like, this happened and the families are obviously still alive. A lot of them anyway. So the question comes up, like, how does it feel when you are a victim of what happened? Like, your son got murdered, and there's a lot of, these Black mothers, these Latino mothers who have these sons that lived a gay lifestyle or whatever, and they were murdered by this serial killer and eaten or whatever. And then Netflix is monetizing that, right? Because that's, at the end of the day, Netflix makes money, and Evan Peters makes money off of doing this show. But the families get actually nothing. Like, they get nothing for this. This is not like something where they agreed, like, oh, I'll give my image and likeness and then I get a check to maybe help them out. Like, no, they don't actually get compensated for having these actors play them in the Jeffrey Dahmer documentary. So while I'm watching Lock Henry episode 2 of Black Mirror season 6, while I'm watching it, I was like, oh shit, they're kind of like talking about that when the main character says, I don't think we should do this because this is like a really fucked up thing to even bring back up. Like, he's basically saying, I don't want to dredge this back up and make it a thing again when it already affected people in such a bad way, including me and my mother, because my dad basically died. His dad was a police officer, apparently. His dad basically died from the serial killer, because the serial killer, I think, shot him or something. And even though the shot didn't kill him directly, it put him in the hospital. And then he ended up developing some kind of disease or illness from being shot that it ended up killing him. So by proxy, his mother says, like, the serial killer killed my husband and your dad.
Yep.
Like, your dad died because of that. If he never did what he did, the serial killer never existed, your dad would still be alive. He wouldn't have gotten shot. He wouldn't have gone to the hospital. He wouldn't have developed this other illness that eventually killed him. And I get it. Like, that to me, that also seems fair to say. Like, yeah.
100%.
So that was the big question that was going through my mind. Like, damn, Netflix is actually making a commentary about a huge controversy last year, because this is 2022 when Dahmer came out, and it was everywhere. Dahmer is probably their biggest show. It's in their like top 5 biggest shows.
It was a huge fucking show. I haven't seen it yet. I'll probably watch it at some point. But
It's
I know
worth
when it
watching.
came out, everybody and their fucking mom watched it.
Yes, and that what you just said, it made Jeffrey Dahmer super popular and trending on Twitter and all over. And when I was scrolling Instagram, all I saw was people.
He was like that was like the most popular Halloween costume that year.
That too, which is also, that's problematic as well. And that's the Halloween costume is just dressed like Dahmer. It's very basic, but it does get the point across because there is a look to him. And yeah, you got to imagine, what do the families feel when they have to hear everyone talking about this? They go on social media, they do anything, they walk outside, and it's like, oh shit, everyone's Dahmer for Halloween. Everyone's talking about Dahmer on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. It's a lot, and we don't have to go through that because we're lucky enough to not have been victims of something as terrible as that. But I always have sympathy for shit like that. I empathize with people who have suffered from some major tragedy. Like, imagine, like, think about Holocaust survivors or descendants of slavery, things like that. Like, when these things get monetized, when Holocaust things get monetized, when slavery things get monetized, like, who's making the money from that, right? So
imagine like the loved ones left behind from the Titanic, when they hear that a fucking submarine went down to see the Titanic and then the submarine blew up. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, you can't escape it. And then that shit was all over. The whole visiting the Titanic's wreckage was all over social media for like a week. There was just a week where the entire internet was focused on a submarine.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a whole week of everyone's life where no matter what you did, that's all that and that's also all that people were talking about. Like, all my coworkers, all of our Zoom calls and everything, that's all they talked about. It was a lot. So when the main character was bringing up how he feels like this is not something that I feel like we should dredge up, I was like, well, that's funny. Like, hello, pot.
Yeah.
Pot, kettle, like, meet each other. So I was like, oh, Netflix is aware, because I watched episode 1 and 2 back to back. And I was like, oh, Netflix is really aware of what they're doing and what they have done and how people feel about it. And they kind of want to say, we're aware of it. We want to pose the question, like, is it wrong? Like, is there something wrong with this? Is it unethical to do this? And I think that they seemingly agree with it because of the way the episode goes, but there's also that, like, money rules all type of thing.
It goes in an interesting spot to try to kind of jump ahead.
So let's go all around now.
They that happens. They're doing documentary about like dogs or whatever, and then it becomes a documentary about the serial killer, and then it evolves. So something that's cool is that you're watching it, or at least I'm watching it, right, and not knowing anything about what's going on. I know Black Mirror is usually about technology, so as I'm watching it, I'm thinking to myself, where's the technological like, there's not really a technological aspect in this episode.
Right.
But so I'm like, okay, maybe that's not here. But I was like, there's always like a Black Mirror twist. Like, the whole point of the series, there's like some weird Black Mirror twist that happens. So I'm watching it and I'm like, when and what is the twist, right? Because the twist isn't just that they did this, now they're doing the serial killer documentary. Like, something else is going to happen about it. And this tension ends up building when the girlfriend is like watching these old fucking tapes. And then she ends up finding out, like, holy shit, her mom and her dad were like the serial killers, or like in on it or whatever.
Her boyfriend's mom and dad were.
Yeah, her boyfriend's mom and dad, not her mom and dad.
So yeah,
her boyfriend's mom and dad.
Yep. So I'll add a little bit to hold your thought real quick.
Yep.
So during the process of making this documentary or whatever, the main character, the guy, and then his black girlfriend, who's super gung-ho and has basically forced his hand into doing this, even though he said that my dad died from this, it'll hurt my mom, she doesn't want to think about it anymore. There's allusions to like certain things that don't really mean anything at the time, like how they used to watch this cop show. His mom and dad used to watch this cop show, so they have these VHS tapes in their house. And the VHS tapes all say the name of that cop show. Let's say like Top Gun or whatever. Like it's just like a bunch of Top Gun episodes on VHS. And it's like, oh, that's cool, I guess. Like they used to tape them and watch them back. You know, that was like their thing. And eventually, as the main character, the guy, he leaves his girlfriend with his mom. He leaves them two alone for a while. Because no, he actually gets hurt. He gets hurt trying to like uncover shit at the actual murder grounds that everything went down. Like Jeffrey Dahmer's basically apartment, his little shed. They go there. And I think he ends up getting hurt at some point or something like that. And he's in a hospital. So then his girlfriend is alone with his mom. That's what causes them to be alone together. And while she's going through those VHS tapes, one of them, as she's watching it, kind of shows that somebody taped over it. Like blatantly, there's the cop show. And then it just like somebody taped over it, which is a thing that you could do, which a lot of people probably don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about right now. But VHS tapes, you could tape over them. And they see a filming of the sexual deviancy happening, like a taping of it, like a live taping of the serial killer and whoever his allies were, because it wasn't just him apparently, doing this sexual deviancy shit to these people before they murder them and chop them up and do these terrible things. So as the girlfriend is watching it, she's like, what the fuck? And at first it doesn't click to her who she's watching. But then the longer the tape goes on, a woman comes in and she has this mask. She has this masquerade mask on in the video. She comes and she's like wearing lingerie, basically. She has a whip in her hand. And you see these humans tied up screaming and begging, please just let us go. Please don't hurt us. And they're like, the people in the mask, the bunny mask and the masquerade mask and everything, you could tell one is the main character's mom. Like but she's young as shit. So this happened a long time ago. So it's her.
But not only that, when you see the mask, that mask is just hanging on the wall in their kitchen. Like earlier in the episode, there's the camera goes to it. You just randomly see this fucking mask hanging on the wall. Yep. Yeah. And it's like you fucking see this woman come out wearing that mask and you're like, what the fuck?
So yeah, the main girl character, she's watching this and she's horrified. She gets really nervous, and then the mom starts to come up the steps. So she hears her come, so she slams the laptop down, right? She slams whatever she's watching the media on, she like turns it off immediately. And the mom's like, hey, dinner's ready. Did you want to eat? And she's like, so she's freaked out. She's nervous as fuck. She's like, oh yes, I want to eat. So they go downstairs and it's just the mom and the girlfriend awkwardly eating. And as they're eating, the girlfriend looks at the wall behind the mom, and that masquerade mask is literally hanging up. So the girlfriend's eye stares at it, and she's like very nervously, basically not really touching her food either, because she's obviously afraid to even eat it. And as she's staring at it, the mom turns around and is like, oh, I got that a long time ago. And she says she's like, my husband gave it to me. And so you know that she's fucking lying, right? Like, it's just like, okay, well, in a way. Because she makes it sound like it's
innocent,
right? When in reality was you wore that to murder people. So the girl gets up off the table and she goes into the bathroom and she tries to make phone calls, no service. And then she's freaking out. And then the mom comes and knocks on the door. Hey, are you okay? She like jumps. You know, she jumps in a bit. She's like terrified. She's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I'll be out in a minute. And then she literally just dicks it. She bursts out of the bathroom, runs out the house, exactly the same thing I would do. So I thought that was very in character for a black girl to just be like, fuck this, I'm out. So she just dicks it and runs. Now, they're in a very like rural suburban area where there's not really much around except grass and shit like that, and roads, like dirt roads and all that. It's a lot. She starts running away and the mom starts chasing her in her car, and it gets to a point where it's really dark. It's nighttime. You can't see anything because there are no streetlights. They're not in a city. Again, they're like in some suburban area with no lights. So as the girl's running away, she comes across a creek and she ends up tripping, falling, and hitting her head and fucking dying. Okay?
She's dying in the fucking creek, yeah.
And what's interesting, the reason why this is important, the reason why I wanted to add context to all of this is because she was the character who was pushing to do this project on this Jeffrey Dahmer serial killer guy so hard through the entire episode, even though people kept saying, man, I don't think you should fuck with that. I think you should just let that go. We could do it on the guy about the eggs or whatever. It's not a big deal. People kept trying to tell her like, no. And she kept pushing like, no, this is how we become famous. This is how we get notoriety. This is great. This is going to really be the big one. We're going to get the best grade. And she ends up dying because curiosity killed the cat. You could say it was wrong for her to even want to monetize or like win a Nobel Peace Prize, whatever she wanted to do. She was trying to win notoriety using the tragedy of this situation. So that was like without wanting to
And then
really.
she ends up becoming a
She
tragedy. And
becomes part of
then
it, kind of like
what's
the Titanic
crazy,
thing, right? They became part of
yeah,
it.
exactly like the Titanic thing, yeah. And then in a form of like twisted irony, the mom doesn't know what happens to the girlfriend. She just knows she can't find her. So the mom doesn't even know the girlfriend's dead, right?
Right.
But the mom thinks the girlfriend got away, and because she got away, she's obviously going to like let the cat out of the bag, right?
Right.
Mom goes home and now thinking that she's caught like the girlfriend's going to reveal everything. So the mom kind of sets up like a suicide note and reveals all this information and like writes a letter and then kills herself because she believes she's caught,
Yeah,
when in
and
actuality she's not caught because
yeah, the
the
girl just
girl's
randomly
actually
died.
dead.
And on top of that, and I didn't really catch this the first time, the mom takes all of the tapes with the evidence
Mm-hmm.
and she puts them blatantly next to her hanging dead body. Like before
Yep.
she kills herself, she puts all of the evidence that ties her and her husband's involvement, because even his dad, who was the police officer, they're all complicit in this. Like this was a big ring of sexual deviancy and murder and all that type of stuff. But like
Yep.
she gets all the tapes, all of those tapes that said like Top Gun on it. She grabs all of them and then she puts them near her and then she hangs herself, I think. And so it's
Yeah, she
very
does hang
blatant.
herself.
So it's very
And
blatant
then
when she's found that, yeah.
And so she gives all this information, I guess, to her son, so her son can make a good documentary. And so, what's the next layer of it is that it was a documentary about volcanoes that turned into a documentary about this serial killer that then turned into a documentary about that story of that serial killer was actually unfinished because his mom was involved.
Right.
And then his girlfriend ends up dying. And then the most cringy shit. So, like, it becomes a huge hit on Netflix, and this happens all the time. Some serial killer documentary or show or whatever comes out on Netflix, and the whole world talks about it. He goes to like award shows and everything. And this is what I was talking about earlier, how like at the end, Netflix makes fun of itself in a way. Because there's a part where a girl walks up, he's like on the Hollywood red carpet or whatever, as like this making this amazing documentary. And somebody walks up to like, "Oh, are you Henry?" And then she like does like that bow thing. She's like, "Oh, I'm not worthy to be in your presence," or
Right.
whatever. And it's like, dog, he didn't make fucking The Departed, right? He didn't
Right.
make like a movie. He did a documentary on the fact that his mom and dad were criminals and are now both dead, and his girlfriend is dead. Like,
Yeah, everybody's dead around him, basically.
it's like so because he didn't make like it's just
It
and
wasn't
like
his
people are like
intention to do it in the first place, like at all.
yeah, it wasn't his intent, and people are like, "You're so amazing," and then he's like so awkward about it because
He wins like an
his
Oscar,
whole
basically.
family's dead. Yeah, like he wins like an Oscar or whatever,
Yeah,
but
whatever
his
it would
whole
be for a
family's fucking
documentary,
dead.
like an
And
Emmy
it's
or some shit.
like, and people are like, this is acting like this is so amazing and so cool. And it's like, he's like, this shit, like, it's so awkward to him
He's visibly not happy at
at
all.
all.
So when everyone else, the director, the producer, all of the other people who are involved in the project, because he like I guess sold the rights or worked with some major studio to put together the final project, they're all very extremely happy when they're accepting the award for best short film documentary, whatever it is at the end. And you see the main character, he just looks so sheepish and just not happy that this has happened. Obviously, because the circumstances surrounding it affect him the most, but everyone else is eating off of it and it doesn't affect them,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I could do a documentary on Jeffrey Dahmer right now. I could do a paper on it if my professor asked me to do one. And yeah, I don't really have any ties into it outside the fact that I fit the demographic that Jeffrey Dahmer would have tried to go for in the 90s. But like, it doesn't actually affect me in the sense that no one in my family has died from Dahmer. I only ever read about it or watched it. So I could get praised for it. I can get an A on my paper. My paper could be published, and all these things can happen that are great for me. But like, I get to do that without any of the consequences of what happened.
But now imagine if Fraser's doing that. And then in doing this report on Jeffrey Dahmer, he finds out his mom was her accomplice and nobody
Right.
knew that he had an accomplice. And it turns out to be his mom. And then in doing that and finding out his fucking mom kills Fraser's boyfriend and like all this shit
Yeah,
happens
just
and
like
then
a
his mom
crazy.
dies. And then so the story comes out and everybody's like, oh my God, Fraser made the most amazing documentary of the century. How do you feel? You're so great. You're impressive. And then he's sitting there like, dog, my mom and boyfriend are dead.
Yes.
And like they were involved in this crazy, like all like you go from not being involved in it at all and like making a thing about it. And then like that's one thing. But then imagine you are involved, and
Right.
and now other people are going to talk about it, and now all of a sudden you feel the pain of but to be fair, the main character understood right from the gate that you've said multiple times he didn't want to do this to begin with.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of twisted dramatic irony in this episode, and it's really cool murder mystery. It's different from normal Black Mirror episodes while also still being the same thing. Like I said, there's not a big technological aspect like there usually is, but there is a classic Black Mirror twist.
Right.
So yeah, it was a really cool episode, I think.
The other thing I like, and I need to bring this up, is because somebody pointed this out to me, is how serial killers love to be seen and famous. They low key kind of want to be found out. It's a part of who their identity is. And the show Mindhunters on Netflix is a whole show.
I just watched season 1 of that.
Oh, I'm so happy.
Because we did the podcast with Steve Rogers. It was Steve Rogers was a optional boss, and we did that podcast. That podcast is doing pretty. A lot of people seem to like it. So if you haven't seen it yet, check it out. It's really interesting. We talk about serial killers, but you guys talked about that show Mindhunters, and I watched season 1 of it so far.
Yeah, so by the time you're hearing this podcast episode, you should have also listened to the one called Serial Killers, Weed, and Card Games, which I love that name, by the way. Such a good name. Can you help me with that? Because Serial Killers, as you guys notice, has an exclamation mark in it to just kind of soften that for the algorithm. But that episode is doing really well on Buzzsprout. I was looking at the analytics, and it is one of our, in a recent time, outside of all the Yu-Gi-Oh stuff just goes crazy. But outside of the Yu-Gi-Oh content that we usually do, it is performing really, really well. Serial Killers, Weed, and Card Games. And I think that episode was actually one of our better ones anyway. A lot of our episodes I like, just being, I guess, a narcissist or whatever. But I genuinely think that one is really good because it's something so different from everything we've done. And in that episode, we did talk about serial killers and the show Mindhunter or Mindhunters. And that show talks about how the term serial killer even came to be. It's before that was a term, before it was coined as a term at all. And then the psychology behind it. But to the point, a lot of serial killers, their thing is that they want you to eventually find them. They want you to write articles about them and do documentaries and make them more famous. That kind of drives them a bit. So when his mom thought that she was going to be found out, she figured, fuck it, I might as well go all the way and just give all the, she could have burned the house down, right? And then it'd have been okay, there's no evidence. But instead, she chose to give her son everything he would need to make this amazing documentary. And it's because she's a serial killer. So that you had to, I didn't really get that when I first watched it, but if you think about serial killers and how they typically operate in real life, that is a thing.
Think about how crazy it is that they're because another common thing is serial killers have trophies. Their trophies were those VHS tapes that they had disguised in plain sight. When you walked in their house, you saw their library of VHS. That was their fucking trophies of the crimes they committed. And it's just right there on display. And there's a sick getting off that they have to have every time they invite somebody over for dinner. And they fucking see a wall of tapes that are them.
That's so true.
That are them murdering people and doing sexual deviancy. And they're right fucking there. Anybody could walk up and touch the goddamn tape. That's actually
crazy. The girl did, I think that the actual girlfriend was just why do you have so many of this Top Gun show? What's the, that was their favorite show, and that's another thing. It's kind of poking fun at you for not knowing what it really is, because it's their favorite show, right?
Yeah.
It has to be so close that it just kind of gets them off a little bit. It's like doing it again, It's damn, I got away with it again. I'm just, it's so close to being found out. But yeah, really good episode. Those first 2 episodes are really good. I think episode 2 was amazing because I, in general, love murder mystery, suspense, horror, anything that. Right up my alley. That's my shit.
Really good.
All right. So the last episode, and we are already past an hour and a half.
Yeah. We're pretty deep in. And I think of these 3, even though I did really like episode 1 and 2, I think episode 3 is my favorite out of these 3.
Episode 3 clearly to me has the bigger budget of all the episodes I've seen so far. So I only saw the first 3. But you could tell because one, the actor who's in it, I would say that he's probably the highest paid out of all of the actors. That Salma Hayek is up there, I'm sure. But Aaron Paul, especially in the recent decade or so, because of Breaking Bad and all the video game stuff that he's been in, Aaron Paul is definitely up there. And this episode, he's the main character. Episode 3, and the premise of episode 3 is pretty amazing. So it is about it is about 2 astronauts, right? They're in this spaceship thing. So this one is very technology based, but it's also very grounded in a way. We'll get to that in a second. It's about these two astronauts who are in space, and they have human replicas of themselves on planet Earth that they can log into from their spaceship. So they're in like this big old spaceship rocket thing, right? Like they're basically in every NASA rocket you've ever seen, that type of spaceship. It doesn't look anything, so it's not super futuristic. Like nothing about this episode.
I mean, I think this episode takes place in the 70s.
Yes,
like it's
correct.
Yeah, it's like takes place in the 70s, so it's like an alternate history kind of thing, but it takes place in the 70s, and it's during when like space was really big in our what we were doing in America. But it's just like technology in this aspect is so advanced where we got these astronauts in space in the space station, but one of the biggest downfalls to being an astronaut is you're away from your family, you're fucking in space for an entire year or whatever. They created this technology where they have these replicas of themselves, as Fraser said, where they can log into, and basically their consciousness, and they can be on Earth basically in these cyborg bodies. So they get to still be with their family and be on Earth and be part of the world.
Let me just say this real quick. I just want to say thank you so much, Kenny, because for just being my co-host and just, doing what you just did. I say that because I am actually struggling a bit right now, and I don't know if you could tell, but okay, let me give some context to what's going on with me right now, because there's like stuff going on. Last night, I went to the Drake and 21 Savage concert. It's really a Drake concert, and 21 Savage came out the last like 20 minutes and performed for like 15 of them. But I went to the Drake concert last night, and I was screaming and yelling and rapping lyrics and singing songs and doing all that stuff. And my voice, like my throat in the back, is getting very sore as I'm speaking right now. And it has been for like the last 40 minutes, and I've just been fighting through it. So I've been having a hard time with that in general. And I was like, man, I almost wanted to cut the episode after just doing episodes 1 and 2 and just say, let's do 3 and 4 and then do 5 and 6 or something like that. But I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to push through because I can still go. But at the same time, my phone hasn't been on Do Not Disturb. So I'm getting like text messages from my friend about something going on. That's like, it's actually like he's going through something, and I'm just like, oh, now, like I told him, like, I can't right now, like I just can't. So my brain is like kind of scattered, but this is episode 3 is actually my favorite one. So I'm just happy that Kenny actually was like, okay, I'm going to explain what this episode is about, because I literally just couldn't for a second. But that is the premise to like set the groundwork. It takes place in like the 70s.
Well, real quick, I want to say thank you to you too, Fraser,
for
being my co-host. And I seriously do mean that. This podcast, this is a random side note where we're both being really gay. But this podcast really is like really fun to me. I've really enjoyed doing it, and I love it growing and getting bigger and everything. Yeah, and it's nice. It's awesome. It's awesome. Yes. So yeah, one of the things that people talk about in this episode is, okay, you have these two astronauts, they're in space, and they have these two replica bodies that look exactly like them. Everything about them is exactly the same. They kind of log into them from space, and so they get to live their life on Earth, but it's not really them. It's like an android type of thing. And what's a major controversy that I heard, or criticism about this episode, is like, well, why wouldn't they have the astronauts be on Earth and then have the replicas go out into space? And that would just like solve so many issues. So if something happened to the replicas, it's like, okay, well, the humans are still alive and well on planet Earth with their families, because this episode goes to a dark place. Just to, spoiler alert, episode 3. I think though, to give it, this is my first time hearing that, but to give a counter argument to it, I would say the replica, what if the replica fails, right? Like yes. At the end of the day, as much as that is for them, like they need, they want to make money or get whatever the reason why they have these people in space, whatever result they're trying to get,
right?
They want to get that result, right? So what if you have this fucking space station in the sky and then the replicas just fail, because that could probably happen.
Yeah, they're on a 6-year trip, to be clear. They are on a journey that is going to take 6 fucking years, I believe. And
so
yeah, there's
these replicas, they could fail. They probably need maintenance, right? So like
they definitely
if they're going to be away for 6 years, there's no fucking way.
Yeah,
like
you're
if one thing goes wrong, now all of a sudden the whole mission is tits up. Like,
yeah, they didn't show it in the episode, but now that you said that part, maintenance, I just thought about they're fucking androids. They 100% are going to need maintenance. But that is a good rebuttal. I just said, do you want a show or not? To the person who said that, to to the person who said that to me.
You want to watch TV or not? What the fuck do you? What do you
I
want?
literally looked at them. They were like, "Yeah, I like that one, but I thought it was kind of dumb that they didn't send the humans, but they sent the humans out into space and they had the replicas be on Earth." I was like, "Well, do you want to show or not?" Like you can say that about anything you've ever watched. Like Daenerys could have not burned down King's Landing, and you know, like what are we talking about? Like Ned Stark could have just been like, "You know what, Littlefinger, I will take you up on your offer, and I will not allow Joffrey and Cersei to take the Iron Throne." You know, like you could literally do that to anything. Neo could have just been like, "Fuck it, I don't want to be the one. I'll take this pill instead," and then we don't have a movie. Like, what are we talking? You know, like what are we talking about? So. Anyway, I just wanted to put that rant out there because this episode is amazing. And to me, it is so far the best one of the season. And I think that you could also tell they wanted this episode to be huge because it's an hour and 17 minutes long. The previous two,
I think it's the longest episode in the season.
I think it is too. Just by the fact that I know Black Mirror typically doesn't go that long. There have been episodes in the past, though, that have gone really long, specials and stuff that have been an hour and a half, so a full film length movie. But this one is longer. And it when you see the actors, they have Kate Mara in it. She's the sister of Rooney Mara, one of my favorite actresses. They are really, really good at. They're just amazing actresses. Kate Mara plays the Aaron Paul's wife, and I don't know the name of the guy character who's the brother astronaut. He's not literally the brother, but like he's the other astronaut.
I recognize the actor, but I don't know his name.
I have no idea who he is, but he is the other astronaut aboard the ship with Aaron Paul. And the cool thing is they both have their own families. So Aaron Paul and Kate Mara are a couple. They have children. They're married, whatever. And then you have the other guy, and he has a family. He seems to be more successful too. I'll just throw that out there. His house is like insanely nice and everything. He has just a lot of nice shit. Or it seems, I should say, it seems like he spends his money on nicer things because just their house and everything is just much bigger and all that. Anyways, so the other guy, he's much taller and like much more muscular and stuff than Aaron Paul is. They do this thing throughout the episode where they kind of show them side by side in a way that almost looks like they're going to fight. And I think that that's for a reason, and I can't wait to talk about that. But they both have their own separate families, and what they do is they like come together to check on things that are going on the ship. So they have these Apple Watches. The replicas have these Apple Watches, and during the day while they're spending time with their family and their kids and stuff, they will be like, "Oh fuck, I have to go." So they'll like log out of the replica. They go to this special room that they lay down, and then they let their brain go back. I guess like their brain or whatever goes back to the real body in space. So they log out and they like do things like, "Oh, this satellite here is fucking up. It's malfunctioning." So they just fix it. And they do other maintenance things on the ship. They just make sure that things are working right. And like Kenny said, now it's starting to make me even more sense to me, the whole maintenance thing and like having actual humans be the ones that go out into space as opposed to the replicas. Like it does make sense. Humans have to make these decisions and stuff like that. But not only that, the replicas are actually them. So it's not like the android is pretending to be Aaron Paul. It is literally Aaron Paul's consciousness sent into this android's body. But again, if something were to happen to those things out in space, like what the fuck would you do? And they do dangerous things. So there's that. Anyways, so they do like maintenance and stuff like that. And that's their life. Their life is very boring.
Quick side note, but they go out like, I don't know, like there's a part where they go out like in the spacesuit and they go out, like space is very cold, right?
Yes.
Now, I don't know how much of that cold gets through that suit. I'm assuming the suit is insanely well insulated so you don't get cold. But my point is, like, who knows if those joints, if those mechanical joints or whatever, like if they get too cold, are they going to function properly? Like, there's just a lot that could go wrong. I fully understand why it plays out the way it plays out.
Do you want to fucking show or not?
Do you want to show or not?
So yes, their life on board the ship though is extremely boring. And it's fine though that it's boring because they don't have to really live it. They spend the fact is they spend most of their time with their families on Earth. And they even say, "I'll see you on Friday." And it'll be like, I don't know, Monday or some shit. So they have like routine check-ins and everything. But for the most part, they're just living their life on Earth in these android bodies with their consciousness in them. And then when they need to, they come back, do checkups, make sure things are running appropriately, and all that good stuff. Well, out of nowhere, this is where this shit gets so good. I think this episode is fucking fantastic. Out of nowhere, the one guy's family gets straight up murdered. Okay? These people come into his house. Now, this is the crazy part. He is actually logged into the body of the replica on Earth. And these people break into his house. It's like a group of them. They break in and they tie him up. They like hit him really hard and they tie him up and they they look at his family, they look at his wife, they're like, you're disgusting because you lay down with this thing, talking about the android or whatever.
Yep.
Like, you lay down
they're
with
like
this
these
thing.
they're like these hippie cultist type people. Like, they're fucking nuts. Like, the one guy says like the man sleeps in the sky and his brain is on Earth or whatever. Like, he says something like that.
Yes.
And I think at that time, I could be wrong, but I feel like at that time, it's not even. I was like not fully even sure what the fuck was going on yet.
Sharon Tate is what that whole thing was derived from, by the way. I don't know if you ever heard of the Sharon Tate murders, but there's a movie it's a Quentin Tarantino movie that we should all watch together. It's amazing. But it deals with the Sharon Tate thing. Basically, Sharon Tate lived in California in the hills or whatever, a beautiful house, and a bunch of people came in. Charles Manson, I think, was the cult leader, and murdered.
Okay, well, I know Manson, yeah.
You know the Manson murders. So Sharon Tate, her and everybody in the house, I believe, were brutally murdered. So when you watch this Black Mirror episode, you see how nice the house is that this guy is living in with his family, and they get tied up, and then they get like you said, hippies, right? They don't seem like they're all there. They seem drugged up a bit and just talking in a weird way. It definitely is derived from that. So they murder his entire family in front of him. And then they start doing shit to his replica. They chop off his hand so you get to see what it looks like. So when they chop it off, you get to see that it's bionicle in the inside. It's all mechanical. And there's this green juice stuff that starts to like float out of its body. So back to what Kenny said about maintenance, definitely needs it. When the hand gets chopped off, they're like, look at it. It's not like nothing about you is real. And they pick the hand up and the hand is still moving. Like the fingers and shit cut off from the actual arm are just still moving. It's actually kind of creepy when you look at it, and the CG is actually a rant. But when you look at that scene, it's like, that is creepy as hell. So he's like, no, please don't. He's pleading, because in reality, the real him is basically experiencing this. His consciousness is in that android's body, so he's fully
experiencing everything that's happening mentally. What's crazy is that like his real body's in zero danger, but he's watching his fucking family just get murdered.
Yes, and they murder his kids and everything, bro. It's awful. Now, you know, I don't think they really show literally them murdering them. It's not HBO, but like the insinuation is there. So anyway, yes, his whole family gets fucking murdered and his replica gets destroyed. They set the house on fire and they leave. The real one, who's up in space, he comes out of the pod, because they have to go into this like bed, this little pod bed thing, in order to send their consciousness down to Earth into their replicas. So he comes out of that, and obviously he is losing his fucking mind, right? Like, he is absolutely destroyed by what just happened to him. And it's an emotional thing when you think about it, like, holy shit. So Aaron Paul gets paged, and he comes back too, because, you know, in his world, like where he's at on Earth, nothing has happened, like nothing crazy has happened to him.
Yep.
So they have a little meeting real quick, and he's like, what the fuck happened? He's like, and the guy just cries, right? He cries really bad, and you get that he explained to him exactly what he just experienced. So Aaron Paul's talking to him, he's like, so is there like anything that we can do? Because he's like, no, I lost everything. I have nothing. Not only that, but I can't even go back to Earth anymore because my replica got destroyed. They destroyed my family. They destroyed my replica. So I'm basically just stuck here on this ship until we finish this 6-year mission, and we have 4 years left. I can't, I can't touch grass. You know, people say touch grass. Like, I can't touch grass. I can't visit the burial site of my family. I can't talk to my mom and dad. Like, I literally can't do anything. I'm actually just stranded up here with nothing to fucking do. And you saw their life when they were not hanging with their families. Like I said, it was boring as hell. They like do nothing essentially. So you see all of that, and so he goes through this emotional thing where he's explaining to Aaron Paul how fucked up everything that just happened was. And Aaron Paul is obviously like, man, so Aaron Paul talks to his wife. He's like, yo, I feel so bad for him, man. Like, he's really out of it. Like, he's
in a dark spot. Yeah, because some time passes and they show that he's just like a shell of a man. Like, he's not shaving
anymore,
through the motions,
not taking care of himself anymore. He's not working out. He used to work out every day. You used to see him on a treadmill doing push-ups, doing sit-ups. He's not doing shit. He's not taking care of himself anymore. Every time you see him, it's low-key kind of creepy. So when Aaron Paul logs out to come onto the ship and like be with him, I personally, the very first time he did it after the murder thing, after his family got murdered, I was like, yo, that guy gives me such bad vibes now, which he didn't give me before. But now that like he's lost everything, and you know that the creepy thing to me is that you know that he's always awake or like around on that spaceship. He's never spending time with anyone else. So he's alone with his thoughts, his horrible, horrible thoughts, because he got to see his family be murdered. Okay. They tied him up.
And I think there's a part, and this becomes important. There's a part where they're talking about it, and I think maybe Aaron Paul's wife, but basically they ask like if they should be worried or if they think anything will happen to Aaron Paul. And Aaron Paul's thought process is basically, well, like it sucks everything he's going through, but the ship needs two people to run it.
It does.
So like
that is a big part of it.
He wouldn't do anything to me because if he did something to me, like he'd essentially be killing himself.
Correct. So that is a really big part of it because they also have separate duties. Aaron Paul is the one who actually, when things go wrong on the outside of the ship, he's always the person who puts on the spacesuit and goes outside of the spaceship and operates on it. So he's the engineer on the outside, which is dangerous because it's in space and it's cold, like Kenny said, and all that stuff. And when you go out into space, you have to take off the necklace. It has this little like flash drive attached to it. And the only way to log into your body on Earth is to insert this flash drive into this computer system before you lay down in a pod. That's how you log into your replica. So without that key, you actually cannot log in to your replica. Now, one of the things that Aaron Paul's wife, Kate Mara, she's talking to him. She's like, I feel so bad for him. And he's like, yeah, I feel bad for him too. But like, what can we do? And she's like, well, do you think that it'd be a good idea if like you let him use your replica just so that he could, you know, go out in the forest and touch grass and like smell fresh air and
to get out of his head, get out of that fucking pan that he's in.
Yeah, she's like, just like a one-time thing, just to, you know, it's been so long since it happened, and I know that up there has to be awful for him. He hasn't seen or done anything outside of just that fucking ship for the last God knows how long. I just feel so bad. I really feel like it's the least we could do is just to let him, you know, roam around a little bit. So Aaron thinks about it. He goes to bed and he's like, hey, me and my wife were talking. So he goes back up to the spaceship. He's like, me and my wife were talking, and we thought it'd be a good idea if you used my body to, you know, do all the things that they talked about. And he's like,
so real quick, when this happened, this immediately, I was dreading, like as the show's building up, I was like, this is horrible.
Kenny.
I'm like, this is a terrible idea. This is absolutely fucking horrible.
Dog.
And something that is so interesting about this episode, in my opinion, we'll get to it as it happens, but the episode, in my opinion, makes it kind of obvious what the twist is, what the Black Mirror twist is going to be. However, they still kind of trick you. And I guess we'll get to that later. At least they tricked me. You know what the twist is going to be. You know kind of where it's going to go. At least I did. But the way it ends up playing out still tricked me and kind of surprised me. And there's things that happen where I was like, oh my God, this is where it's going to happen. And it didn't happen. You're like, what the fuck? And
they do such a good job at the suspense.
What the fuck?
So like
dude,
Kenny
the
said,
suspense is so real.
This is why this episode is amazing. I think this episode will win awards. I just think really highly of it. And what Kenny said is exactly how I felt. So watching this episode, I was messaging Discord and I posted on Facebook about it twice. I was freaking out. The second the suggestion of him, I didn't know that you could even use each other's body. So let's start with that. So when they made the suggestion, I was like, oh shit, that's a thing. And then I was like, oh no. So the second that happens, and you know what Black Mirror is all about, you know exactly where it's going. There's one of two ways that this could go. And I'll tell exactly what my brain said when I heard him offer to use his body on Earth, right? I said, okay, one of two things is going to happen. Either one, and this is the one that I thought was the most obvious, and this is also the one that I thought was really going to be the ending. I said, he is going to go into Aaron Paul's body. He's going to like the life that he has, because the life up in that fucking spaceship is so boring and awful, that he's going to kill Aaron Paul, so kill the real one, and just live his life as Aaron Paul on Earth.
That was pretend to be Aaron Paul.
Pretend to be Aaron Paul.
1,000,000% what I thought as well.
No question. The second they said that, the second they offered the option of him going in and like just using it as a one-time thing just to get some fresh air, I was like, nope, this is going to be a huge mistake. So that was option one. Option two, so one was like he murders him. Option two was that he would kill his whole family so that he is the exact same as him, with the intent that like, now we both don't have anything. So now I have permanent company for one. And two, now you know what it feels like because I'm just a spiteful motherfucker. Now, part of that didn't develop until a little later in the episode because of something that happens. And I'll just say it, and we'll just talk about it now because that one wasn't fully formed. But I did think that there was a part of me that said, "What if he just like does the same thing to him?" And then later on, they have an argument where he says, "Like you don't really appreciate." So the guy who lost his whole family in the beginning, he tells Aaron Paul on the spaceship, "You don't fucking appreciate what you have. You don't even know what you have. Your wife, she feels unloved. She feels unsatisfied. You don't even touch her." He starts going in, like getting real personal. And Aaron Paul's like, "What the fuck are you, like, how dare you say that to me, first of all? And two, you don't know anything about what my life is like. Like, how dare you say those things to me?" And he's like, "No, you don't know what I feel like." And when he said that, I was like, oh shit. Like that was what really like, and it wasn't long after that whole like you don't know how it feels to be me thing. When he said that, I said, "Oh dear God." So option 2 is probably where they're going with the whole.
It's gonna get bad, right? And also, just to like talk about the wife real quick. How interesting and weird is it?
I love
right?
it. Oh, I love her.
The wife,
I love her character.
the
It's
wife
complicated.
ends up like it's so complicated because the wife ends up kind of because when he goes in Aaron Paul's body, the other guy, he starts developing feelings and kind of flirting with the wife, and the wife's kind of flirting back.
Yep.
And it creates this weird situation where like the wife is kind of cheating or thinking about cheating.
Oh, I love it.
But at the same time, it's so because like that is the face of her husband, right?
That is literally the man she fell in love with.
Yeah, it is her husband, but it's her husband, but not her husband. So it creates this really weird fucking dynamic where it's like she's cheating, but at the same time, like, is she cheating? Like it gets super weird and muddy. And he like there's that one scene where because he's painting the house, what ends up happening is he's like, "We'll let you go in like once a week, 1 hour a day or whatever, and for you to paint this house because that like helps get his stress out or whatever."
Yeah.
And then when he's doing it, like he ends up like fucking doing this weird painting thing with her and like feeling up on her. And
so he has an eidetic memory, and what that means is that it's just another word for he has a photographic memory. He can see something, and literally redraw it. He could draw whatever he sees after seeing it basically one time is the way they described it. It's a little extreme, but he saw the house one time and he literally drew the entire house on the spaceship. So when Aaron Paul comes back to the spaceship, he's like, "You drew my house?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I saw it and I just from memory." He's like, because he only had at that time he'd only have been in Aaron Paul's body once. It was this one visit. He saw the house and he fucking painted the entire thing, or like drew the entire thing on his notepad from just that one trip, which wasn't even that long. So he's like, "What the fuck? Like, you have this insane ability." And then the question of, would you allow me to use your body so that I could actually paint it in the real, like on Earth? Like, I want to paint it on Earth and I'll stay out the way. I won't bother anyone. I'll just kind of use the barn and I'll just paint your house, and it'll just help to clear my mind. It'll be something that I do every once in a while, right? Like, I don't want to be intrusive. If it's too much, let me know. I'll back off. Yeah, so there's a lot, but the wife, you brought up the wife, and I think that this is why this episode is like, to me, Emmy worthy. So when he first gets there, when the other guy first gets there and he's in the body of her husband, on one hand, you're like, well, that is literally, like Kenny said, the body of the man that she fell in love with. That's his face, that's his body. Everything about him is exactly who she fell in love with. That is her husband that she technically sleeps with every night too, because the replicas, they sleep next to him. They look just like him. They have all the things. So they look just like him. So in a way, it's like, well, if she likes him, it's kind of hard to not, because that is physically him. Now, what ends up happening is the guy starts to flirt, like Kenny said, but it goes like so much more in depth than that. When he first gets in the body, he goes out to the woods, he smells the fresh air, he sees the sun, and he gets next to a tree, and she's kind of around, like just kind of floating around him, and he collapses and cries really hard. Okay, and this was emotional for me. Like, I actually felt when he broke down after just like being on Earth again, and the thought of what he lost on Earth, like his whole family, his kids, his wife, everything taken away from him, he just starts crying bad. And it's, mind you, you're watching Aaron Paul weeping, okay, like a baby, which is not a hit, like, is not me, being toxic masculinity right now. It's just like he is literally crying so hard, and you feel it. So the wife is staring at him, this stranger in her husband's body. She's staring at him from behind as he's weeping, and she comes up behind him and she wraps her arms around him
and consoles him.
She wraps her arms around him and she consoles him. Now, this is, to me, a very human thing to do. I totally get why she did it. Also, again, remember, this looks like her husband. This is basically, in every way, physically, this is her husband. So she wraps her arms around him as he's crying his ass off. Okay, Aaron Paul is giving a Oscar-worthy performance, and then the guy logs out. The guy goes back to the spaceship. He hugs Aaron Paul really tight. He says, "Thank you so much, man. I really needed that. You're like, you did your big one with that. Like, I'm forever in your debt." He gives him all his reverence and all his gratitude, and then Aaron Paul logs back into his own body. He's like, "Hey, so how did it go?" And the wife is like, "Oh, it was fine." He was like, "So anything like, anything happened?" She's like, "No, it was just he just walked around a little bit around in the forest, and he but there was this one moment where he broke down crying really bad." And he's like, and Aaron Paul, the real one, he's like, "Oh, really?" And he's like, "Yeah, he wept like a baby, basically." And he's like, "Oh, so what did you do?" And this is where this is so. She goes, "Oh, I did nothing. I just kind of stood there. It was a lot." And right there, I was like, "Oh man, this episode's crazy," because I was like, "Yo, what if there's a third ending where she tells the fake one, the other guy, I want you to kill my real husband and take his body so that we can live happily ever after," which is the utmost craziest form of cheating in the world, right? Because
and there was also just crazy shit too, like the fact that she has her husband, right? And then her husband, like they've been married for a while. He's kind of like dejected in a way. Like he's like, I don't know, he's just not a super loving, caring husband, right? Like
you're right.
He doesn't show
I have something
emotion
to say about this too,
like
but
that.
yes.
And then when the other guy comes into his body, he's more like flamboyant and like boisterous and like does things and like reads books that she's into and
he's
he
artsy.
has like a more
he likes music that she likes. He likes books. The real Aaron Paul does not read. The fake Aaron Paul loves reading. Also, he's a painter, and she just finds that to be she clearly likes artsy stuff, right? And the other guy is very artsy, and he's also way more physical because the real Aaron Paul doesn't really touch her. I want to say this real quick, and I hope I'm not making you lose your train of thought or anything, but this is so important to me. I had this conversation with a coworker about this episode because he was like, they didn't explain why Aaron Paul, the real one, was so dejected, why he was like not really into his wife like that, why he just goes to sleep. She reads a book at night every night with her light on, and he just lays next to her on the side and goes to bed, right? He goes straight to bed. And that's kind of like the life they live. But they also have 2 children, and yeah. So he was like, they didn't really explain why he's like that, like what happened. And I said, to be honest, when I watched it, I just assumed that is the typical married couple. And yeah. And he started laughing at me at first. And I was like, no, like, think about it. I was like, a lot of people who have been married for a while and they have kids and all that, the romance, unfortunately, this is, we're being real here. The romance starts to die. This is what happens to real fucking people. There's a reason why over 50% of all marriages end in divorce. So when my coworker was questioning why they never even decided to go into why Aaron Paul is the way he is, I said they didn't really need to, in my opinion. If you lived in America and you're an adult watching Black Mirror, you know exactly how it is when you're in a relationship or when you're married to somebody for years, you guys have kids, and especially when you have kids, because that's when a lot of shit starts to happen where she doesn't feel the same about her body anymore. She doesn't feel beautiful. And this is not a dig at women. This is what real people deal with. She doesn't feel beautiful. Mm-hmm. She doesn't feel like having sex. Also, you can't have sex for a while after having kids anyway. Not that they have newborns, but just saying. So there's that aspect where you don't have it for a while. And then apparently women develop a psychological thing where they start to convince themselves that they're no longer attractive, even though some people's bodies don't physically change as much as others. And some people gain weight. All types of things happen. It's the gift of life. A lot goes on with the woman's body after giving birth. But for whatever reason, women feel like they're not beautiful anymore. They don't want to be touched. They don't want to have sex. And on top of that, men also change too following the birth of a child. Also, you guys don't have as much time for each other as you used to have when it was just you two. So all of these things to me are implied when I see how he gets in from work after a long day and he just goes basically like lays in bed, puts on his jammies. He's like, all right, good night, love you. And he just go to sleep. And that's kind of like how he is. But I didn't think of it as like, oh, they have like a bad marriage or he's a terrible husband. It's just like, unfortunately, that just happens to a lot of people. And I use the example of my one friend. I'm not going to name his name because this is a real life thing. But somebody I grew up with, his mom and dad, I'll never forget, Now, kids are awful. So let me preface this story by saying kids are awful. His mom and dad, they lived in the same house, so they were married. But the dad slept in the bedroom or on the living room couch every day. And I would be over at my friend's house all the time. And I got that mixed up. His mom would sleep on the couch or in the bedroom upstairs every day. His dad would be in the basement and slept in the basement every night. And there have been times when I would stay at his house until like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. So I'd be at my friend's house playing the game, doing all kinds of stuff, playing Yu-Gi-Oh, whatever. I'd be over there forever. And I would see that those two barely had any romance that I could visibly see while I was there. And because I had been there so long, I've basically seen the whole night. Like, at what point is he going to not be in the basement? And then I realized, like, oh shit, he sleeps down there and she sleeps upstairs. Like if me and my friend were in the living room, she wouldn't sleep in the living room on those nights. But he told me like, yeah, my mom sleeps in the living room all the time and my dad sleeps in the basement. And that's just his man cave and he always sleeps down there. And I used to make fun of him, and so did the rest of my friends. That's why I said kids are awful. I used to make fun of him saying that your mom and dad are going to get divorced. Like they're going to, like, let me know when they let you know that mommy and daddy are not going to be together for much longer. They're going to have that talk with you because those motherfuckers aren't in love anymore. And this is just me being a teenager. I was terrible, but all of us made this joke because we all said, yo, your parents do not fuck with each other. They don't have sex. They don't sleep in the same bed. They don't touch each other. They don't really converse that much. Like she seems to naturally just have the way she would even talk to him when we did see them talk would always be in this, I don't know, short tone, like just very short with him all the time, like give him a command or say like, why do you do this? And use his name a lot. And to me, that always gives the vibe of you're mad at me. She would say, why didn't you do this? Name. Why didn't this happen? Name. Can you do this, please? Name. I asked you to do this yesterday. You still didn't do this. Name. And I was like, yo, the way she talks to your dad is not the sound of a person who's in love. So I would make that joke. But I say all of this to say that Black Mirror episode 3, Aaron Paul and Kate Mara's marriage, you do not see them having the best marriage. It's just a very like, I don't know. It reminded me of my childhood friends, the way his mom and dad interacted. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing because they're actually still married to this day. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong per se. It's more so that that's just people just kind of grow apart. That's just real life.
Not even so. Basically, everything you just said is essentially what I was going to cover, and then lead into this. So, obviously, I would have said it a little different, but essentially, yeah. And you said some things I wouldn't have said. So, I think that sometimes when you're in a no matter what the relationship is, eventually the spark. Like that puppy love spark is going to dwindle, right? It doesn't mean the relationship's bad, doesn't mean it's on the rocks, whatever. But like you're not going to go out and do these overt super affections, like shows of affections when you've been married for 35 years. Like
Correct.
That's just not what you do anymore. You become it's like how a lot of people their relationship is with their mom and their dad. Like your mom and your dad, it's like, oh, I love you and whatever, but you don't go and do these overt things for your mom and dad, like the more you're alive, because there's a part of you that's like, it's expected that you are in each other's life. Like you guys are a part of each other's life and that's what it is. And if you're with somebody for long enough, that's how it is as well. There's not like when you're first born, your dad and your mom, you are literally the light of their entire fucking world.
Literally that.
By the time you're 25, of course, you're still important to them. If something happened to you, they'd be terrified, but they don't spend every waking moment of their life thinking about you anymore, right?
Yeah.
And that's the same thing in relationships. So say all of that to take everything Fraser said to say, something that I find interesting with all of that is that they are in this, in my opinion, very normal marriage, Aaron Paul and his wife.
That's exactly what we're used to. It's normal.
What ends up happening, though, is now her husband, this person that she sees, is now somebody else with a different personality, and what a spark is now ignited again because it's still her husband. It's still this man who physically she's in love with. And then like their marriage is normal. There's not anything necessarily wrong with it. But the point is, this new consciousness in his body creates a new spark in this relationship where it's like it feels like the first time again. It feels like puppy love. It feels like the honeymoon phase because he's doing new things and he's dancing with me and he's reading books and all this other stuff.
He's paying attention to her. And I said this to my coworker as well. I think that this is such an interesting thing. And this is not, we had this conversation and it wasn't like I was saying like, oh, you're so dumb that you think these things or that you think that they needed to explain these things that were implied to me. But I'm also, he's way younger than me, just by the way. But I was saying to him that it's easy for the fake Aaron Paul guy to be everything she wants. That's how that like I could easily take someone else's spouse who's already a little unhappy in a relationship because I could just be what they want me to be. It is very
You can be
easy.
everything.
It's so
but
easy.
5 years from now, you won't be able to do that.
Correct. It's so easy to be exactly what somebody wants or needs when you haven't dealt with them except just now. Like everyone knows what the honeymoon phase is, right? Like you meet somebody and it is the fucking best part of every relationship. You literally meet and you're like, I want to spend every waking moment with you. I want to have sex with you all day. I want to travel with you. I want to play games with you. I want to do everything, right? It's the best. The honeymoon phase is fucking insane. And people sometimes low-key don't even realize that they chase honeymoon phases because they jump from relationship to relationship for that feeling. Because you can't get it after the honeymoon. That's it. You never get it again.
True. I think that shows the responsibility of relationships and like being a person. Like if a lot of people, when they think a relationship's over and break, when you hear people say the spark is gone, the whatever's, all that stuff, what they're not realizing is that like that's life. That's really like your mom and dad don't have a honeymoon spark anymore.
Right.
Like that's life. And so part of a responsibility of being a partner is to not be like, oh, well, you don't excite me every fucking day like fireworks anymore, so that means the relationship's over. Like, no, like that's not what that means. But that shows a level of maturity and responsibility as you get older. And you know, when you deal with relationships for however long you end up dealing with them and however long it takes for you to realize like there's a difference between the honeymoon phase and like the actual nitty-gritty of a relationship.
Yep. After you with somebody for a long time, it definitely does wear off a bit. And that's just human nature. I think that people really do grow to and from each other. Like you grow apart. It happens.
Yeah, I mean, there's a honeymoon phase in everything, right? Yeah. When Zelda Tears of the Kingdom came out, it's the only thing I did for 19 hours a day.
Yep.
Now, I still love the game and still play it, but it doesn't control my life the way it did the first 2 weeks it came out.
Can relate. Monster Hunter had the same chokehold when it first came out. Sunbreak has released all this content in the last couple of like months that I really haven't gone back to because I don't feel the same way I felt about it when we were playing it together and it was like a year ago and all that. There's just other things for me to play. Like I'm still loving Final Fantasy 16 and you know I still got to finish God of War and there's all these other things that have happened and I kind of just slowly like, okay, I did what I want to do with this game, and I see where they're going with it. The developers started to change things, right? They literally changed how the game was played to a way it became all about anomaly level and research level and shit like that. And it's like, okay, I see where you're going. I don't feel as strongly as I once did about this. And that's fine. People are allowed to change and allowed to grow apart or whatever. But if you made those vows and everything, you're like, you know what, we have children. I still love you. I don't feel the honeymoon feeling, but I still love you, right? I still want to spend my life with you. And that's ultimately how I feel about when I saw Aaron Paul interacting with his wife, the real one. And then when the new one comes in and he's all artsy fartsy and fucking everything she wants him to be, she starts to fall for it a bit. And I can't fully blame her, but I'll say this, because I wrote this question down as a bullet point. Is the wife cheating? I say yes, because at the end of the day, physically sure, that's Aaron Paul. And it is kind of unfortunate that she's in a circumstance where she would even have to deal with a perfect version of her husband. Because that's essentially what this fucking fake guy is. He's literally the physical thing that you like, right? You physically like your husband. But then he's also now mentally perfect too. But that's not real life. And it sucks that she would ever be put in that position because no one should have to be put in that position that she's in. So I empathize with her, but I do think that at the same time, it is still fucking cheating because obviously that is at the end of the day, that is actually not your husband.
So yeah, I agree. I think I can empathize with her because she's in a situation that she shouldn't have to be in. But I do agree that it is still cheating. I've heard, a lot of people have talked about this, that like real cheating happens when it happens mentally.
I agree with that.
Like you can be attracted. Like there's a million people on the planet, a million women on the planet that I can look at and be like, that's a fucking beautiful, that's a hot woman, a sexy woman, whatever. But like, you don't do, obviously physically cheating is like horrible, but sometimes what is worse is like when your husband or wife is like mentally checked out of you and into somebody else and is like going to somebody else and talking to somebody else. And then that can often lead to the physical stuff. Like a lot of the real cheating happens mentally before it happens physically.
Yeah,
like
that's
you start
very,
falling
very true.
for somebody
the
else.
Thought happens first, usually.
Yeah.
It's the thought first.
What happens here is that she is she's being brought in mentally to this other guy. Physically, it's still her husband, and so that's always going to be whatever it is. But she's being drawn in mentally. She's being like swooped off her feet by all this other stuff that's happening. In their relationship, like the chemistry or whatever you want to call it.
They have her and the fake Aaron Paul have amazing chemistry. And what's so cool to me is that Aaron Paul, in that first time he ever visited and the guy was weeping, asked, "What did you do?" And she lies. And so right there, I was like, oh, this is getting so good, because she's not saying what's actually happening when he's not there. And it's the other guy around. So the other thing is that the other guy notices that she likes to read and he recommends books to her. And he notices things about her. He compliments her. He helps her with all types of random shit. And she does try to stay away from him, but it's hard because it is still like here's the other thing that's kind of scary. They put him in a barn to do his painting, right, of the house. And I keep thinking to myself, like, that is a little creepy to me still, though. Like, there's this man who is painting. You don't know him, technically. Like, you don't know him, but he's painting a portrait of your house to get his mind off of things. You know that his whole family was murdered and all this other stuff. And he looks at you, and you can kind of tell, because she's not dumb. He looks at you in a way where you could tell that he likes what he sees, right? And he starts to make little advances. He puts on this one song at a point, and they start to dance, and he starts to feel on her. And at one point, he grips her breasts. And at first, she's into it. And what's cool is that in the beginning of the movie, or in the beginning, it is a movie. I'm just going to call it a movie. In the beginning of this episode, though, they showed him dancing with his wife to the same song.
Yeah.
And
I think the song is a French song, and it translates to the name of the episode.
Beyond the Sea, yeah.
Yeah.
So he's dancing with in the beginning of the episode, this guy was dancing with his real wife, and he did the same exact thing where he grips her breast in this way, like as they're dancing, they're slow dancing. He does the same thing while he's in Aaron Paul's body to Aaron Paul's wife. And at first, she's letting herself be completely taken in by this experience, because this is what she kind of does low-key want from her husband, but she's not getting anymore. So when she stops him, obviously, she pushes off of him, and she's like, you fucking overstepped your boundaries. She gets upset. And he's like, I'm so sorry. But then when he goes back, he doesn't mention what he did. He does not mention that he right? Yeah. He doesn't mention the physical aspect of what he did with Aaron Paul's wife. And he starts to draw her now, secretly though. He doesn't draw like any. In the open, he drew the house, right? So Aaron Paul saw him draw the house. It was just when he went into his little room, he saw it. But when he draws Aaron Paul's wife, at first he only had a face when he was drawing her. Yeah. After they have that dance and he squeezes on her boobs, he comes back to the spaceship and he draws the rest of her body because he's felt it. And he has one of those eidetic memories where it's, he photographic. Basically, he can just draw off of that one thing. So he literally completes the portrait of her naked, though. He draws her fucking butt-ass naked. And this is going to come up later. But yes, so that was amazing. That whole little thing about him having a photographic memory and then him getting physical with her having to reject him even though she was with it at first. And I was like, well, it is, like physically it is him, but then it's also not.
But you can get lost in the moment because it is him, and you're like, you can get lost in the moment, like,
And he seems harmless. He's like, come on, dance with me. Come on. Just, he puts his hand out, and you're looking at imagine, you're looking at your fucking husband telling you to dance with me. And
it's his voice too. Like it's everything, right? Like it's still your husband's voice.
It's everything about it.
So like it's so easy to get lost in it. And that like, maybe this is my husband. There was a part where I thought, we both thought that like he would just straight up pretend to be the husband and like be there, and like she wouldn't even, there's no way for her to know the difference. And I also thought like maybe there would be a situation where she does something with him and she thought it was her husband, and then when her real husband's there, she'll end up saying something and like, oh, I thought that was you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there's so many weird ways it can happen.
I definitely thought that he was going to come back, pretend to be the real Aaron Paul, basically like what you said, and fuck her, right? Like have sex with her.
Yeah.
And then go back, give the body back, and then and then doesn't say anything to Aaron. She doesn't say anything either because maybe she doesn't realize like that it wasn't him or something, and that'd be like a big point of contention. There's so many ways that this episode could have gone, which is part of the reason why I think it's brilliant. Is that they could revisit this episode and they could change things about it and make it a different ending and different middle parts, and it would be fucking fantastic because this episode could have gone in 80 different ways, and I think all of them would have been insane. Some better than others, obviously, but I don't think that there's a bad way to write this once they set it up. Once they set this shit up, dog, I was like, the second he said, "Can I borrow your body?" or whatever, or he didn't say that. When they offered to let him borrow the body, the second that sentence came out,
it was so bad.
I said, "Oh, the decision tree from here is wild." Like the decision tree for the writers had to be difficult as hell because it's like we could take this in so many places and all of them are amazing. So something that happens, and we're going to wrap this up eventually, but something that happens in this episode also with the fake Aaron Paul is that he ends up hitting the son of Aaron and Kate. He hits their son because the son was misbehaving or whatever. He literally physically hits the kid, and she flips out. She's pissed. Obviously, she's pissed because that is not something that he should be doing. He should not be disciplining. But then when she tells Aaron Paul this, he fucking says, and I was taken aback, but he's like, "Well, that kid is known to do shit all the time. And you remember that one time when he fucking broke my windshield? And he said, I wore into him so bad that day." He says, sometimes that's what he needs. So she's like,
yeah, it's so weird. It really shows that it was the 70s. Well, that it really shows that was the 70s, like right there. Cause like the way he was acting was such a dad kind of just being like, yeah, I mean, that kid needs his ass. And then also, I think like there was, the son was never supposed to know that it was never that like sometimes his dad wasn't his dad. And so I think maybe that was brought up too. I don't fully remember, but it was just like
it was hidden. It was supposed to be hidden from him. Yes.
Yeah. So he was like, he did what I would have done. Like it would have been weird if he didn't get smacked for doing that. Right.
So okay, there's that. So he hits the son. She loses it as a mom would because that is not your dad. So confusing. But when she tells Aaron Paul, he's kind of like, I kind of get it, but let me know if he did anything else. Which she doesn't mention any of the other. He's like, well, what else did he do? And this is her opportunity to mention that he touched her inappropriately. And I was waiting because she was pissed. I was like, oh, this is perfect. She is furious with this fake dude that she has no reason now to protect him or hide shit from. She's like, no, fuck him. I thought this would be a perfect moment for her to say, I don't know how to tell you this, but he touched me inappropriately. But she doesn't say it. When he says, what else did he do? She just lies again. So she's been lying blatantly about their relationship. And the guy can't wait to get back to the painting / Aaron Paul's wife. Like he's like giddy to get back in that body. He can't wait. And it gets to a point where they get into an argument. And this is the argument I alluded to a while ago, where he says, like, you don't know what you have. Your wife feels untouched. She feels unseen by you. He's like, don't you ever fucking tell me about what my wife wants or thinks of me. You don't know shit. Okay. You don't know what we've been through. You don't know I love her. I'm her first love. And I'll always have her. Always. Because why? She chose me and she's mine. And he, like Aaron Paul, he is furious. The veins are popping out of his neck. He genuinely seems mad. His acting in this episode, he played this role so well. His acting seems so outrageous. And he's yelling at this guy. Now, this is where I talked about the side by sides. They framed these shots. Whoever directed this episode is insane. They framed the shots where Aaron Paul is arguing with this guy or like yelling at him, where the guy is like 6'4" and Aaron Paul is all of like 5'9". Okay. So I just want you guys to imagine this smaller man looking up. He literally has to look up. He's craning his neck up with the veins bursting out of it because he's so mad and he's red. Imagine looking up at a basketball player. And the guy's also muscular. He's fucking low-key jacked. You can see, like, he wears tight t-shirts. He's jacked. They keep framing these tense moments with their physicality. And I don't think it's for nothing. I don't think that that's like we're just showing these two men have a conversation. Like, no. One of them's mad at the other one for something that any man would, in a regular circumstance, attack them for. But you're looking at them and you're like, yo, if it came down to it, though, if I had to bet, somebody said, gun to your head, you have to choose who's going to win this fight. And if you choose wrong, you die. I'm choosing the other guy because physically he is so much bigger than Aaron Paul. So much so that I think the episode is so aware of it. Aaron Paul starts to work out vigorously after he feels threatened by his space partner. You remember he starts to like work out a lot. And I was like, oh shit, he's aware that in order to fight this guy, he's going to need to be in shape a lot more than he already is to do that. So they start showing him on the treadmill, lifting weights, doing fucking sit-ups, back and forth, push-ups, push-ups, push-ups. He's going crazy, pull-ups, everything. And I was like, oh, he's working out because he's getting ready. He's like, I'm gonna have to kick this guy's ass. And he noticed like this guy's big as shit. So I thought that was a really cool part of the episode. Anyways, it gets to a point where like he tells him, you're never going back in my body. Like we're done with that. Like we're fucking, that is over and done with. You've hit my kid. You've said things about my wife. Then he finds the drawing because after that happens, he starts snooping through his shit. And
what's fucked up about this is because he knows that this guy has a photographic memory. So when he finds drawings of his wife completely naked, now at this point, the wife has never actually gone all the way with this fella. She's never shown herself completely naked to him. But when Aaron Paul finds the drawings of her completely naked, his mind goes, did she fucking show herself to him? Like, did they do something? Has he seen her naked? Because he knows this guy has a photographic memory. And so is he drawing my wife from fucking memory and her tits and ass and legs and
right? And that's a really big question because I think he does bring it up to his wife, right? Like, how the fuck did he know? Or
I don't remember specifically, but I think that I'm pretty sure it is brought up.
Yeah, it's brought up at some point about how he knew it was either brought up to the space partner dude or it was brought up to his wife directly of how did he know how to draw you naked without fucking you and sleeping with you and seeing you naked, right? Like, how did that happen? Because I know he's like, he has a photographic memory. How the hell did he get the ability to do that if he didn't see you naked? She's like, I don't know. Or like, so, it's like, I don't know. But that is a really key part of it as well. And so he tells him like, you're not using my body anymore, basically. Like, you're not using my replica. That part, we're done. You fucking stay where you're at. We'll only work together. So then it gets to this point after that heated argument where Aaron Paul, the real one, is in the replica body hanging with his real family and everything. And his Apple Watch goes off.
Oh man. This is like where this is where the meat and potatoes are. Like the whole episode's amazing, but this is where the jelly gets put on the peanut butter. Like 100%. This shit is insane.
So his Apple Watch goes off and he's like, oh, I have to go. There's an emergency. And she's like, what is it? He's like, I don't know yet. So he goes back to that little room on planet Earth and he logs back, he sends his consciousness back up into space, the real human Aaron Paul. So he's like, hey, I'm back. What happened? He's like, oh, satellite 4 is down. You're gonna have to do some maintenance. So this is the guy who lost his whole family, the guy who's basically said some wild shit to him about how you don't love your wife properly. He tells him that satellite 4 is down and needs maintenance. So now Aaron Paul, because this is his job, he suits back up. He takes off the necklace thing that has the fob / the flash drive to log into his replica. He takes it off, and they showed this earlier in the episode, so this is not something abnormal. He takes off everything, puts it into this tray, and then gets into the spacesuit and goes out into space. Now, it's been the responsibility of the other person on the ship to always let the other person in, right? Mm-hmm. So the other guy is responsible for letting him back into the ship when he goes out for these maintenance things. They have to lock it after you go out. You have to lock it. You got to airlock it, and you got to reopen it, and then all these procedures and stuff, right? So he goes out to fix it,
and there's nothing wrong with it.
And there's nothing wrong with it, right?
He goes, "There's nothing wrong with Satellite 4. Like, what's going on? There's nothing wrong with Satellite 4."
And the guy is not answering him at all. Like, he gets nothing back.
And this is where crazy tension happens, right? Because I'm sitting here like, holy fucking, like, he's going to just leave him the fuck out there.
Oh, bro.
Like, he's just left out to fucking die.
And he starts to hyperventilate a little bit. Yup. He's getting, like Kenny said, the cold part. So as well as those spacesuits are insulated, you just know they ain't insulated that much. Like, you're still cold out there, I'm sure. It's just not as bad as it obviously would be if you were out there with nothing. And it's to the point where if you're out there for too long, I'm sure they're not meant to be out there for extended periods of time. Like, extreme extended periods of time. You know what I mean? So, so as he's out there, you start to see like the helmet kind of fog up and shit, and like the nerves that Aaron Paul is having, the fear creeps in because he realizes, oh shit, I'm at the mercy of this guy who's a lunatic, but he's been by himself. His family got murdered in front of him. Something that no man should ever have to experience ever. The worst has happened to this guy. So he's experienced the worst.
The only thing that's kind of, and Aaron Paul's known this for a while, and basically the only thing that keeps him like putting his life in, like trusting this guy, even though he doesn't even want him in his body anymore, is that he knows that, like, well, this guy can't technically do anything to me, because if he does something to me, then he will be basically committing suicide. I need to be here because it takes two people to run this. But even though we know that and we've been told that, here we are now being like, holy shit, he's going to leave this fucking guy out to die.
Well, I was like, he's gonna steal his life because he said she's mine. Like Aaron Paul told him in the end of the argument, I'll always have her because she's mine. She belongs to me. I'm possessive. She belongs to me. And when he says that, I'm like, oh shit. Like he's gonna just take her now. He's gonna take your life. He's gonna leave you out there to die and take your life. And after him being out of the the entrance of the spaceship for a while and scared out of his goddamn mind, the guy eventually lets him in. When he comes in, how does it happen, Kenny? He comes back into the spaceship and the guy is smiling, right?
Yeah, so he gets brought back in and it's fucking... So right now, you've been watching this for an hour or whatever, so there's so much fucking tension. What is going on? You've known for 45 minutes that something bad is going to happen, and you kind of know how it's going to happen. You thought it was happening right there, but then he lets him in and you're like, what the fuck is going on?
Right.
And then he gets in and he's kind of smiling or whatever, and then I think Aaron Paul looks at the tray and sees his USB drive isn't there.
Right.
And then the other guy reaches in his pocket.
Yes, that's what it was. With this smirk on his face.
He's like, Aaron Paul's like, what the fuck? And like takes it and then like runs past him and gets inside his fucking like his uplink to go down to his body. Yes. And like now like what the fuck is going? Like the tension right now is on 11.
Two things right here. So when the guy reaches in his pocket and gives Aaron Paul the flash drive, the uplink thing, whatever fuck, when he gives him that thing and he gives it to him with a smile, I thought of one of two things. I said, oh, he told him that you'll never talk to her again in their last argument and that she's mine and all that stuff. So I said, maybe he just went to apologize because he literally said, let me go back. I just want to apologize to your wife. I'm sorry I overstepped my boundaries. And I just want to say one last thing to her and I'll never talk to her again. I'll never do anything. I just want to apologize. And he's like, you'll never fucking talk to her. Aaron told him, you'll never. No apologies, no nothing. You will never talk to my wife again. So what I thought was, in this moment, when he's smiling and he gives him back the flash drive thing, I said, oh, I think he said, like, you told me I would never do it. And I went and apologized to her anyway. So I low-key thought, or not what my mind went to in this moment was he went and talked to her and said, I'm really sorry. And she's just going to be like, yeah, he came down and he was saying, like, you guys fought, but he felt bad. So anyway, Aaron Paul rushes past him.
For me, it happened so fast.
That's the thing. It happened so quick. It was quick.
It sounds like you gotta, like, while it happened so quick for you, you went rosy. You went, like, maybe it wasn't so bad. For me, I was like, I don't know what the fuck happened, but this is horrible.
I thought it was bad, Kenny, but I didn't think
fucking terrible.
Kenny, I didn't think the worst. I cannot lie. I did not think the worst. I was like, okay, he wanted to basically say, I still got to talk to her again, despite the fact you said I never will. That's what I thought the point was. Yeah. And that's what, like you said, that is some rosy, hunky-dory, like not super dark
I thought maybe he went down there and like had sex with her, tricked her, because the whole episode, I'm thinking eventually he's going to go there, pretend to be Aaron Paul, and have sex with this person.
That's a totally reasonable thing to conclude because that could have been the episode.
Yeah. And so, like, the tension is so fucking high right now. You're like, what? And then so he gets in the fucking body and he sends his consciousness down.
And then when the replica when the replica of Aaron Paul, now this is the real Aaron Paul in his replica body. He walks out of the room where he initially always starts at. And
I don't even think I think it gets bad before he walks out of the room. Doesn't he open his fucking eyes?
That's correct.
And he's covered. He is covered in blood. He opens his eyes.
Absolutely.
And there's blood everywhere.
And his hands
all over him.
Yeah, literally, specifically, like the hands, man. His hands are so bloody. And he sees a streak of blood going from the room that he starts in to like the kitchen, living room area, whatever. And what I love about this is, again, it's not HBO, so they don't have to like show you what exactly happened. Aaron Paul walks out to the living room area, and in the distance, the camera just kind of pans out and you see like all this blood and shit. And he just starts crying. And he's like, no, like one of those. And you feel it too. The look in his eyes as he falls to his knees is so bad. It's like that movie Gladiator with Russell Crowe, where in the beginning of the movie, his whole family gets killed, his wife and his son. And when he finally gets back to his house, because he doesn't know that they were murdered, he has a He rushes home on a horse, and when he gets there, they are burned, like literally hanging and burned. And he falls on his knees, and he does that thing where like you put your hands together and you kind of put them up, and he just screams no. And it reminded me of that a lot. And they don't show you her like slashed up or shot up or anything, but you just see a ton of blood, and you know that obviously this guy killed his family. So then I'm thinking the episode ends right there. Like this is black screen, literally sees his family dead, black screen. But no, it doesn't end there. He goes back up to space. He logs out of his real life, goes back to up to space, and they have like this little meeting area that they used to always go to like talk and play games and stuff. So now he goes back and he is obviously livid. Aaron Paul finds the other guy, and he when he walks in that room, the guy is seated at a chair, and he has that same kind of like smug look on his face, and he pushes out a chair for Aaron Paul to sit in, and he fucking holds his hand out like, go ahead, have a seat. He doesn't say anything, but he just holds it out like, have a seat, as Aaron Paul is still at the entryway of the room, and they just show Aaron Paul's face, and the episode goes off. Now, that is ambiguous because he could do one of two things right there. He could, or does he sit down? I forget.
So I don't remember if he sits down.
I forget if he sits.
This part of the episode was like such a beautiful chef's kiss because throughout the episode, you are given the impression at a couple different times where like this guy's in a really dark place, but he won't do anything to me because he can't, because this ship needs two people to function. And what's funny is that the way the whole episode is framed, and I think it happened to me, Fraser, happened to Connie, Cheyenne, and I think probably everybody that watched it, we all were under the impression that at some point this is going to go bad. He's going to like kill Aaron Paul and pretend to be him, right? But the episode tells you that that can't happen because the ship needs two people to. So if Aaron Paul dies, the other guy's basically committing suicide. It needs two people to function, right? So now what you have here in this final moment is you're sitting across from a person who murdered your fucking family, and now you know you can't kill him, because if you kill him, you die, because this ship needs two people to function.
Let me add something to that too.
Go ahead.
So while the show does tell you that if it's not two people, then the mission is kind of a failure and you will basically die as a result. The other thing I always thought about while I was watching it was, if you kill the other person, you have your own personal hell now. You are completely devoid of human interaction. You are by yourself now. There is no one to talk to, no one to vent to, which is a human thing that we love to do. There's nothing. You have no one, you have nothing. And to me, that is almost a deterrent. And that is a deterrent to harming the other person, because it's like, well, fuck. If I kill this person and I don't even have my replica, so now you have no replica at home. And you have no replica, and you also don't have the person that will talk to you in the ship. You just go crazy, right? You die from it. You probably just kill yourself, honestly.
Yeah.
Slowly.
It's crazy, man. Like, it's fucking the whole situation is just so insane.
Yeah. The episode was absolutely fantastic. One of the best. I said, to me, that was one of the best episodes of TV I've seen because of all the potential. So it actually was written well, and it went amazing. Like everywhere that it went, I think it did a great job. Whether that be some of the obvious things or not, I don't really care. I think that it did a great job regardless of all of that. But what really got me is that the route that they chose is fine, but all the routes that they could have chosen from the point that we call like the divergent point were all amazing. Yeah. Every route from that point, no matter where they took it, if they went with Kenny's route, my coworker's route, Sean McCabe, because I talked about this episode to Sean McCabe a lot the night I watched it, and he was like, oh yeah, I thought this and this, and I was like, that's actually amazing too. So there were so many routes that this could have gone. A lot of people definitely speculated the whole, like, I'm going to steal your body, I'm going to pretend to be you, your wife won't know. Here's my ending. I'll say what my ending was. My ending was they kept showing them in ways that looked like they were going to fight at some point. I thought the episode would end with those two getting into a physical fight. They don't show who wins, but you know that it was a fight to the death. And at the end of the episode, his wife is just like doing laundry or something, or in the kitchen. And Aaron Paul comes up behind her, and he looks at her, and she turns around, and the episode goes off, and you have no idea who it was.
Yep.
That's what I thought was going to happen.
It could have gone so many ways, and it's just like, it really is like, I don't know. I don't know what else. Like, it is. I have no complaints. Yeah. It was an incredible fucking episode of television.
It was so good.
Now, so tense, kept you on the edge of your seat the whole time.
Kept your mind racing, thinking.
Kept your mind going. And then, I just, I love the ending they went with. I love how it kind of bookends the entire situation. But then I also think, like you said, there's a lot of ways they could have taken it. And a lot of those ways would have also been fucking really good.
They would have. I'll say this: the way that they chose with the chair thing at the end, Kenny or I, neither of us can remember if he sat down or not. If he sat down or not is not really important. What I will say is important is I would have beat his ass. There's no world where after knowing that you spitefully killed my whole family because yours died and we had an argument. Now, granted, I get it. That guy was not in his right state of mind. He used to be a normal person. He used to be a perfect, and they showed his deterioration. So it's like the episode was long because it needed to be. And I like that.
Yeah.
Because it was necessary to show his deterioration and how once he started to use Aaron Paul's body, how he became a person again. He started to, in real life, when he came back to the spaceship, he started to shave, take care of himself, eat better, exercise. So all of
he was given a new lease on life, a new breath. If this episode is 45 or 55 minutes, it would probably be terrible.
Yes. To be blunt, yes, it probably would have been. And the fact that it was as long as it was, you got to see the highs and lows of this person, the fall of this man. And I love that at the end it's like, well, damn, why would you spitefully kill somebody's family? But it's like, well, think about it. He's not in his right state of mind. You're thinking in a logical way. Mm-hmm. You're thinking with the mindset of a person who's sitting down listening to this podcast right now, or who's making this podcast.
You're safe at home watching Netflix. That's what you're doing.
And you're like, how the fuck could someone do that? But it's like, bro, have you lost your entire family and watched it happen? Have you seen your children die in front of you? Have you seen?
And then not only that, you have no connection back to the real world again. Your only connection is through this person, and now this person takes it away from you. Yes. Like he says, like, well, you'll never go down there again. And then you were going down there and you were catching feelings with like just it's almost like his life was ripped from him again. Not condoning anything he did.
Right.
But he was already crazy. And then you trying to be a good friend gave him a lifeboat. But then you were like, you're being fucking crazy. I'm taking the lifeboat away. And he's like, oh, you're taking the fucking lifeboat away. I'm fucking sinking the ship.
That's exactly what happened. So he gives him, like you said, the decision at the end was, if you hurt me, if you do anything in retaliation to me, we both die because this ship needs two people. I'll tell you right now, I don't give a fuck. He would have gotten his absolute ass beat. One of us would have just been dead. There's no world where I would accept any kind of like apology or olive branch, as they call it, or anything like that. I would have had to, on God, I would have beat his ass. Okay, that'd have been how that episode ended for me. Like I would have beat his absolute ass.
You know what they should do? They won't do this. There's no way they'll do this.
I'll already know because I think the same thing.
If 5 years from now they fucking release a part 2 to this episode, and it's like there's so many there's things they could do, but I would love if like you get 5 years later.
I want a continuation because I think that it would be cool if they developed a romance. And
I was saying, what happens? You still have to spend 4 fucking years with this person, assuming they don't kill each other.
Yeah,
4 years. So what? Do they slowly, randomly, because they're just together? Do they become friends again?
Right. Do you slowly like forgive him for it,
bro? I'm telling you, like 4 years from now, they make a part 2 would be insane.
Yeah, I think that a part 2 would be insane. And I was thinking this like around like 5 minutes ago. I started thinking like, man, what if they made a part 2? And the thing is that like they slowly not only became like friends, but then it starts to get weird and they start to become kind of romantic or attracted to each other. And this is not me saying that because I'm homosexual or whatever. This is me saying that because I do genuinely believe that, and this is me, this is what Fraser thinks. I think that people actually don't fall in love with like physically like this person. I think that they fall in love with a person, like who you are. And like personalities and certain traits, not necessarily like the physical aspect of a person. Like, I know if you're listening to this and you've been straight your whole life or you've been gay your whole life, right? Because it can go either way. And you're like, oh, well, I would never, like nothing about me thinks of a man being attractive but I also don't think that you've been in a situation like the one in this episode before where you're confined, you're basically imprisoned with this is the only human being you have. Literally. This is it. This is the only other human.
Like I agree. I look at like I don't know, pick whatever celebrity you want to fucking pick that you think is super fucking hot, right?
Yeah.
Super sexy, whatever. But you look at that person, you know they're hot or whatever, but like, would you have anything in common with them? Like, pick whoever it is, Beyonce, fucking Rihanna, Jennifer, whoever you want to pick, right? If I were to actually have to talk to this person on a day-to-day basis and like wake up and eat breakfast with them, like I probably, and it sounds crazy to say, right? Assuming like I don't need Beyonce's money or whatever.
Right.
Eventually, I'd probably break up with Beyonce because, yeah, she's fucking beautiful, whatever. I'm just going to go out on a limb. I'm assuming Beyonce doesn't give a fuck about anime, doesn't care about video games. Like, everything that's interesting and entertaining to me, she's not going to give a fuck about.
Right.
So, like, yeah, she's hot, but eventually you're going to leave her. And then people, I can't believe you left Beyonce. It's like, dude, fuck her. Like, we have nothing in common.
Also,
you know what I mean?
And I know this episode is very long-winded now. We're approaching like the 3-hour mark, which is crazy. But I'll also say this, like, there have been times where I've been around someone, and I think this has happened to a lot of people before, so you probably can relate if you're listening to this. You've been around someone who you remember initially when you met them that you did not find them attractive. Like, you blatantly remember a time where you looked at this person and you thought, this is not my type, right? Like, this isn't who I would go, because that's human nature. Attraction starts physical, and then attraction evolves past the physical, because it has to evolve past the physical. So it starts physical. So you look at them and you're like, not my type. Or you might even think like ugly, right? You might straight up think this person is ugly to me. And then you get to know them. You hang around them a lot. You guys have a lot in common. You guys find each other funny. You like to banter with this person. And over time, what ends up happening is you start to find this person attractive, not necessarily because of what they physically look like, because initially you didn't, but then over time that starts to erode and you start to find them physically attractive. You start to find them attractive in other ways that you didn't even expect them to be attractive, like them making you laugh. You're like, damn, I kind of like being around you. And that is what has happened in my personal life, because I hang around like a lot of guys, because I'm just like naturally a guy's guy. Like, I've always just hung around the boys, and that's just always been my thing. So I have been around guys who I know for a fact, like, I did not find them attractive when I met them. And then over time, it's like that starts to happen. I start to see things or find things about them that I find to be attractive over time. And I've also had it happen where a guy has found me attractive and started to like me in a way that I'm talking about a straight guy, mind you. Like, in my life, I've had multiple straight guys where this situation has happened where, like, over time, they're like, it starts off as like, oh, you're cool. You know, I hate to say it, but verbatim is like, you're cool for a gay guy. It's kind of what I get. Like, they'll say like, you're cool for a gay guy. I always thought that gay guys were going to be more flamboyant and like a certain way. And like, you're not like that. And I like that. And whether that's problematic or not is not the point. The point is that it starts off with like I had this perception of you, or what gay people are, what people are like you in general. I had this perception of you, and it has since evolved into something that I never expected. And then over time, then it graduates and it evolves into like a full-on attraction that is now a homosexual attraction that was not there when they first met me for either of us. Like, it just wasn't there. It just wasn't there. And then it becomes a thing. It's like, throughout my life experiences, have experienced that more than one time, where I realize when people now in 2023, you hear people say things like sexuality is a spectrum, and it's not just as binary as straight, gay, or whatever. And I agree with that now that I'm older and I've experienced these things for myself, that like, sexuality, I really do think it's a spectrum. I don't think that it's as simple as like, I like men or I like women or I just like this or whatever. I think that in my heart of hearts, in my soul, I feel like people really do fall in love. Like, when you fall in love with somebody, I think you fall in love with the person that they are, and not necessarily like, that
puppy love phase. When you're in love with them, you are in lust with them,
right?
Like, initially,
that honeymoon phase
like,
is a lot of lust.
That honeymoon phase is almost all lust, and it's depending on how the relationship starts, it's like due to physical attraction, whatever. But I 100% agree with everything you said. And I just to flip it on its head, that also happens in the opposite direction. I have met girls in my life who are bombshells. Like, literally they are bombshells. Like, they are like, you meet them and they're like, oh my God, they are so fucking hot.
Yep.
But then you try to have a conversation with them, and this is me talking as a guy interested in girls.
Yep. I'm
not saying girls are like this. This happens to anybody, right? Anyway, the point is, you have a conversation where you're like, I can't have a fucking conversation with this person. This person is an idiot, or this person, like, we have nothing in common. Like, you talk to them and their eyes glaze. Like, I'm a kind of guy, I say a lot of like jokes, and I'm an asshole, and I make fun of a lot of things, and I try to do it in a funny way. And there's been times when like I do that, and I'm so used to like the people that I do that around getting it, and like either laughing or playing off of it.
You're our friend for a reason.
Yeah, and then you do that in front of certain people that you are friendly with, and maybe somebody that you're attracted to, and you do that, and then instantly it's like super flat. They're like, they kind of look at you like, what is wrong with you? I can't believe you said that. And then when you try to have a conversation with them, they can't hold a conversation about anything. It's like, what are your interests? They have no interest. Like they don't have interest. Like they just fucking,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Or at least they
There's
don't have any interests
there
that are discernible to you. Like they just like, oh, did you see the football game or the basketball game or the baseball game? And I went out to the club and I drank beer. Like, anyway, the point is you can see somebody that physically you're hyper attracted to. But then when you talk to them and you get to know them, you are not really like, you're like, I have no interest in this person at all. Like this person
that
is not for me even a little bit.
A very, 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 very real thing. And I was piggybacking off of what you said about like the Beyonce or Rihanna or whatever. Like you get with them and in your head you're like, yeah, this is the ideal human for me. But then in reality, like if you don't have anything in common with them, they're just another person, right? Like they're beautiful and you could surely you want to fuck them because that is just who we are as people. We're animals. But then past that, the thing that makes us more than animals, right, is the fact that we can think and we can feel differently. Like it's more to us than just our physical. Like animals have sex and then can never see each other for the rest of their lives and they're fine with that. And some humans, sure, if you want to be funny about it, some humans can do that too. But like at the end of the day, I think that humans do want companionship and and like that's kind of what we're getting at is that if you don't have things in common, it doesn't matter how hot they are. It all fades eventually. So, okay. I think that we completed this episode. This was an amazing.
I think so.
This was amazing. And my voice is, I don't know what's going to happen to it, but I drank some water after Kenny jumped in for me. I drank some water and it felt a lot better, which is why I was able to go another hour and however long it's been since that little interruption. So it's time for Patreon. Thank you. Right now we recorded this episode. It's actually the first of the month is August 1st. So right now is when Patreon is doing its thing, charging like most of the people I think are being charged at this time. So I know when it does this, like sometimes it takes a while to process. And then when it does it takes people's names off of their active membership thing while it's trying to charge your card. So if you don't hear your name, just check your payment method, check that your Patreon thing went through to be sure that it's like still there, because sometimes people, if you change your credit card or if like, I don't know, like sometimes everyone goes through different shit in life, but like if you don't have enough money in there and they try to take it out or whatever the case may be, right? It will obviously be rejected, decline it, and then your name will fall off of the active Patreon member list. So if you don't hear it, definitely check that out. And then if something else is wrong, just like message me directly. Anyways, thank you guys so much for being supporters of the podcast. The amount of people that we have on Patreon is actually insane to me that like it takes us this long to read all of these names. I love it. I love the fact that we have this much support. And so many of you have been rocking with us for months. I hope that you did check out the July 2023 Patreon exclusive episode. That episode was so fun to record. So again, make sure you're enjoying that stuff. If you're on desktop, Patreon, you can see a sorting of all the episodes. So on mobile, I'm not sure if they added it yet, but on desktop, you can blatantly sort it by Yu-Gi-Oh episodes, Marvel episodes, episodes about movies, episodes about TV shows, episodes about rants, episodes about video games, episodes about anime. And then the most important one, I think, is episodes that are about monthly exclusive Patreon only. You can sort it by that, and it will just give you every episode that is a Patreon exclusive. And that's important for obvious reasons, because those are the ones that when you're at the party member tier or higher, you get those episodes unlocked. So anyways, without further ado, let me give a shout out to Connie, Ronathan, Leon, Stardust Dragon Assault Mode gave me PTSD, Xavier, Hylian, Dimitri Barnes, Volvi knows a spot in the woods. Let me go to page 2. Dominique Roberts, Giovanni Avalos, Alex Flamer, Dan Vrabel, First to Home, Estat Akuma, Mitchell Nels, Midwest Gaming, Dimitri Safirdas, Vince Marquette, Dallas Bailey, KJ, Roz Weiss, Nick Stango, Hanto, our 2-time national champion, Ka-chan is a poorly written character, Sarah Maria, Sunny Top Cup Podcast, Alex Ahern, Philip Campa, Chris Lynn, Wookie 159, MSW 2389, Kyle Batelho, Sugal, Nick, Mr. Soultide, Nafa, Corey Fowler, Vicky Venomon, still love that name by the way, Elijah Barfault, and then
a true hero, Tyler Tadeo, Volvi, the Mega Monarch, Big Stinky, Duty Booty. It's
Duty
funny
Booty?
That Duty Booty and Big Stinky are right next to
that
each
is
other.
Actually wild, and I didn't even notice until you just said it, because I'm just usually waiting for my Duty Booty part.
Adam Corey and Raged Peacock, Leo Bacani, Janitor 215, James A, Thomas Rude, Joshua, Carol, Wayne Trader, Eric Chai, Finesse Kid, Tim Amaya, Owen Tedford, Jeff Strain, and Veda. I'm not a Yu-Gi-Oh player. Golfing.
That's so good. So interesting thing about Veda's subscription is that he subscribed for the entire year. So he paid. You get a discount when you do that. That's the only reason I'm mentioning this because if you guys do want to support, I mean, I want you to save money, and therefore doing a yearly membership it saves you money. I think it's like 15% or something like that you get off, maybe a little bit more. But he subscribed for the whole year, so he just paid one amount straight up. And now he's going to be on this list for the next 12 months minimum. And that's really cool. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Veda, for that. But also anyone who's interested in like saving money and still wants to support, you can do that. And it helps out a lot because then we have your subscription for like a whole year. And that's just obviously amazing for us. So thank you guys so much. I plan to do the next I Am Nerd tournament. Well, I guess I don't even need to announce that. I should announce it in the Discord because this episode is going to air. By the time you hear this, that tournament will probably have taken place. So I'm just going to shut my black ass up. Anyways, guys, as I always say, do the things that make you happy, including enjoying some of the best television that I've seen in a long ass time through Black Mirror. Now, obviously some of the episodes are better than others, but they every once in a while, they just have an episode that is so good. So enjoy that. And we will catch you on the next one. I think that's
everything. Everything Fraser said. I just also want to say when we started recording this episode, the sun was up, and the sun is very much not up right now.
Yes,
if you see Patreon, the lighting has changed for me.
It has. This is one of our longest episodes. It's in the top like 5 or so. So I really hope that you guys like this one. We did not expect to go this far, obviously, or this long, but I mean, it is what it is. This is our proof though that we don't just say, oh, we're at like this amount of time, let's just chop it here just because it's this amount of time. Like it's not, we always say like if the episode calls for it, we'll do it. So anyways, guys, catch you in the next one. Peace. Peace.